The stream is frozen.
Is the stream frozen?
Stream is frozen.
Alrighty, I'm starting to go live myself.
That's buffering.
Yeah, it's just gonna be buffering for a little bit. You just came through on the stream.
Alright. I'm live on my end, so...
The good thing is that I'm also recording it, so...
Go ahead, Alistair, send me the link to whatever you're streaming on.
Sure. I'm streaming on YouTube.
So, yeah. Send me your link, that way I can post it in the chat once we do ads.
Alright, gotcha.
Alistair, you read the script, right?
Yes, I did. I read through the script, read the rules. It seems like a lot of common sense stuff that you posted a little bit earlier. No TOS breaking, fair.
Is the script just this very short thing that we got that I see?
Yeah,
It's basically an outline.
Yeah, I was reading the little 6-line outline, and I was a little bit above the chat, and all that was like common sense, intuitive stuff.
Okay, they get food shops' link. Where's food shops? There it is. Okay, we're gonna be starting soon. Alright, so everybody's here.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Alistair the Great.
Oh shit.
So, these people reached out to me is because they wanted to do a roundtable discussion. They are Neo-Federalists.
Am I the only one
so
with camera?
a little bit...
Yeah, fruit shops on fruit shops.
Well, I might be starting a little bit soon. And they're going to do intros, so that
Yeah,
might
when
be the
fruit
best thing to
shops
wait
gets
for.
back.
Yo, I was thinking of like... Should low-key have like a...
Dedicated gamer.
No, I mean that, but like a VTube, like the VTuber shit,
Yeah.
but of like historical figures.
That could be cool.
That's a great idea. I should
not
get
a
a
bad
Thomas
idea.
Paine one.
Yeah, if you could do that, VTubers, man. If you can't think of anything to put on your screen, dude, just use a VTuber avatar. I mean, the thing is, if you look at any major channel, they like, okay, what's the other option, right? If you do videos, you do video essays, which, you know, of course, you can use a bunch of stock footage, but if you want to, like, set up, like, a semi-brand, you do need to find something to put on that screen.
Yeah, that's what we're probably gonna do, actually. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Wait, I just need to get a couple of need to get.
I get a lot of
What
flack
the-
for using a little VTuber avatar, but it's better than a black screen.
Yeah, it is much better. And like with politics, like some people just get so personal with their attacks.
Oh,
that, like,
yeah.
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 Okay. So we're gonna start. Go ahead and start now.
Alright.
Tony, take it away.
Hello and welcome to the Roundtable. That name is still a work in progress, by the way. I'm your host, Tony, and I'll be hosting today with my co-host, Patriot. We are both members of the Neo-Federalist movement. As a part of our commitment to promotion of free speech and open forums, we have set up this show. The topics discussed are chosen specifically to address recent and contiguous issues in American international politics. The topic for today is economic and modes of production. We will be discussing the most effective, the most sustainable, and the most moral economic systems. Before we start with a question, we have a few rules. Number 1, no excessively talking over each other, especially the moderators. If you keep doing such, you'll be muted and your participation in further panels will be unlikely. Number 2, conversations should try and stay on topic as best as possible. Although if they do go off topic and everyone is interacting, host can make an executive decision to keep it going. 3, host and co-host may participate in debate in any way, but the host is to always prioritize the other speakers over themselves. 4, any conversation breaking Discord, YouTube, or Twitch TOS will be shut down immediately. 5, with the introduction of the topic, each panelist will get a brief period to answer the questions asked before there will be an open forum, respecting each panelist's time during this period. 6, be at least moderately respectful. So in starting this conversation, please introduce yourself, economic system you subscribe to, and the biggest critique you have of any other economic system. So that's mode production. I'll start with the J guy. I can't even see the full name. That's
James the Liberated.
Okay.
Alright.
James, speak.
Alright, so I am James the Liberated. You can find me on Twitter at LiberatedJames and on YouTube, James Liberated. My ideal system is Austro-libertarian anarcho-capitalism, which is since trying to make a more free and open society with free and voluntary exchange. My ideal monetary system would be free banking, which has competing currencies. There you have market instance that you'd have gold, silver merging rather than the current fiat system we have. And my main criticism of different monetary systems would be their more focus on immediate consumption rather than long-time production. I'll elaborate on that later.
Okay. Alistar, you could go.
Alright, hey, I'm Alistair. I run a small YouTube channel where I talk pretty in detail about economic planning and the socialist mode of production. I started my first video about Paul Cockshott where I did a personal interview with him in front of a couple of people. But the ideal economic system that I advocate for is a labor voucher planned economy, or planned socialist economy, and I consider this to be a solution to a lot of the inefficiencies and the failures of typical market mechanisms when it comes to economic resource allocation.
Okay.
Midnight.
Would you say, is kind of more of a Chicago school libertarian when it comes to economics. I do believe in the idea of macro regulation and for environmental externalities. I'm in the protection of individual rights at the highest cost possible. To get more into detail, I'm a Milton Friedman simp, and I love controlled economies to a point.
Okay, Vaughn.
So, I consider myself somewhat of a Keynesian. However, I'm skeptical of the current kind of liberal consensus on economics, which we've seen with sort of neocon and the current globalist tendencies, which have some value, but I think also have a lot of negatives. So I'm a mixed bag of public-private partnerships, which I'm probably the biggest fan of. But sure, I'll get more in depth into that in this discussion.
You never know, man.
Okay.
Patriot.
Yeah, I believe into a system called pure capitalism. It's basically the idea that a capitalist system is only defined by its ability to get sustainable outputs. So if we have a system, it should be sustainable into the future. It should continuously bring out economic growth that functions primarily as the majority of consumers would be like the middle class and the lower classes interacting with the markets. So basically them prospering, in my opinion, is the thing that brings the economy into like its full force. And the current mode of production is probably very unsustainable and needs to be switched over. And that means that even if you have sort of quote-unquote socialist systems, I believe it's still capitalist as long as it brings the most economic prosperity. Okay.
Neo-Fed.
Basically, I heart centralized banking. I think that capitalism is very cool, but if there are some things that it cannot address efficiently, so this would be like transportation, for an example, or like plumbing, just utilities in general. I would say I'm an establishment shill, and yeah.
I forgot their name. I can't see it because it's share mode. Food shop.
Oops.
Yeah. Okay. So, capitalist simp. The way that I would probably just criticize other systems is that the one that is most prosperous, that is most in practice, that has sustained the longest amount of growth, top nation and etc., is capitalism, right? But then other systems, they've fallen.
Me too, dog.
And typically, there's typically a reason for that, right? And yeah, I always question the question of hypothetical systems, like the ones that you build in your mind, and that's about it, because they've never been put to the test. They've never been put in practice. So I always question that, and that's it. All right, that's it.
Red, green, Marxist.
My name is Red Green Marxist. I'm a Marxist-Leninist that advocates for a state socialist economic system. I believe that ultimately we should have a worker state, and that workers should decide what to produce, where to produce, and how to produce it. And that in doing so, we can have a more rationally planned economic system that meets the needs of all. My greatest critique that I have of contemporary capitalism, whether it be found in the free market variants or in the more social democratic / Keynesian variants, is the tendency for capitalism to centralize and accumulate over time, so much so to a point where the public interest gets undermined, to a point where capitalism becomes unsustainable and creates a disproportionate class antagonism between the capitalist class and the workers. That's my opening statement.
Okay, Sue?
Dog, I haven't eaten all day and I'm starving. Come on,
Hi,
you
yes, I'm Sue.
that pizza
I'm
looks
an
delicious.
anarcho-capitalist. I believe in individual responsibility, and therefore I think the economy is organic and the free market should and can provide everything that is in function in society. I believe the economy can be explained by individual exchanges between different individuals. And
Yeah, I think
my
we
main
outnumbered.
criticism would be an economy controlled by central planning when it comes to allocation of resources.
Okay, gentlemen?
Alright.
Distinguished gentlemen?
I'm not a big fan of big words, so I support limited government interference within private transactions, and I think you should just be able to trade with whoever you want, and that should be the end of it.
Okay, I'm Tony, I'm the host, and I disagree with the Hamilton view, which is industrialization, trade, and also us having a strong federal banking system. And my biggest critique of capitalism / socialism is that every time it has tried to be implemented, it has led to a shit show.
Okay.
Okay, now we head on to the actual
Open
debate,
floor?
but yeah, the open floor, yeah.
Okay. Anyone got anything they want to start off with?
I mean, I was before the stream started, I was talking about a lot about IP law. And I am curious to what more of the more leftist view is on IP law, and if one has entitlement to their intellectual property.
I can respond if you'd like.
Yeah.
So Marxists and communists are typically anti-property or anti-private property, and intellectual property would be considered something that is utilized to extract profit. So most communists are against intellectual property.
Okay. And like, so one is not entitled to the idea, it's the worker who's entitled to create it.
Well, it's not so much that. It's when you make something a piece of property, you declare it exclusive to one person rather than others. So, like, if you were to, say, to create, like, a cure for cancer, right, and somebody wanted to monopolize that and stop others from actually using that kind of technology, right, that would be detrimental for the vast majority of humanity. So, that's why most communists are against private property, is because it ends up being exclusive and utilized against, like, the vast majority of people.
Okay. Vaughn? You were saying something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't know if I would agree. Maybe on the extreme left, there the general position would be like no patents or intellectual property law law support. However, I think on the more moderate left, maybe the concern is more that intellectual property will become this constant thing that is used to really hurt people, because some intellectual property of some vaccine or something stays on the books forever, and then it's used to gouge consumers. So I think I wouldn't say there is a. I think the positions on intellectual property on the left are probably a bit mixed, in terms of how far it goes on that.
I know that some of the ANCAP views are of like, well, if you lose it, you lose it. But I am curious to what Sue would say on that, because like I know that differs depending on who you are.
I don't believe in intellectual property. I don't think ideas can be considered as property because there is this, conflict over them. Like, it's not a scarce resource. For something to be considered property, they have to be scarce. So how can we call it property? That's my idea on it.
I used to share that position when I was a libertarian back in the day, is that intellectual property or informational property can't actually be property, is because you don't deprive anybody of anything if you just share it. So I'm kind of in part still in that position today.
I would definitely argue that I would say that a company does have a right to their intellectual property to a point. I would say depending on what the product is, right? So like if you have a new patent on, let's say, a type of TV, like that is a luxury item. That is not something that you necessarily need to survive, nor is something that is necessarily important. But like when it comes to let's say like medication, like insulin or like any sort of pharmaceutical, I don't think you should be able to have an extremely long-term patent live like 70 years on, let's say, insulin or adrenaline shots, because I think that is a detrimental harm to society for the long term.
Okay.
I would say that like when we talk about a lot of these ideas, we try to like stick into like one group, like, oh, this is what like Kant said, oh, this is what Marx said. But like I do think that like it is good to say like, oh, well, maybe you can try this for some things but not for others.
Okay, so I would still make a rather forward argument that even if it's not a luxury thing, if you want to talk about advancing society and advancing the productive forces and technology in general that will lead to an overall better outcome, I'd argue against intellectual property, even in the cases for like consumer goods like TVs, because when it comes to informational property, the more people producing it means that they can produce it for cheaper and they can compete in producing these things cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand that, but I think that people are sort of entitled, like their ideas do carry value, and so I do think they are entitled to gain property off of that value.
Okay.
Like, whether it be money, influence, stocks, regardless, because it's all worth something, right?
Yeah, I would say that like if you got rid of completely intellectual property laws, there'd be a lot less reason for anyone to like invent or invest, right? Because like if you create something, then it's instantly going to be taken away from you, and you're not going to really be able to get any like benefit or gain from it. So I don't see like much reason in that situation, especially for things like I think the best example of this could probably be like what would it be, like music and entertainment. Like there's no reason at that point to do either, because you're not going to be able to gain any profit off of it, because all the profit gained from music and entertainment is intellectual property.
Okay. You mind if I go ahead and respond to that?
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, with the particular case of art, I'll actually argue in the exact opposite position of that, is because I'd argue that the reason why art is so corporatized and sterile these days is because, there's such a high threshold to entry that only really people who can afford the tools and the instruments to participate in this competition can really play that game. And so, I would say because of the threshold to entry, and on top of that, only because of intellectual property laws actually hinder back creativity to a large degree. Because how many times have we looked at derivative work and be like, that's really an interesting thing? I still remember back in the early days of YouTube where people used copyrighted music over all sorts of crazy things or little hobby film productions, and that doesn't exist anymore.
Wait, hold on. Do you think intellectual property laws are only there to protect like large companies?
Oh, they end up doing that consequentially. That's what I'm arguing.
If you're a small creator or like you're a small artist and somebody else uses your work, don't you think that intellectual property laws would also protect them?
From a logical, pedestrian view, it makes sense why you'd argue for intellectual property and protecting the interest of small content creators, but that's never what happens. Either it ends up getting bought out by a bigger company, or intellectual property ends up getting appropriated by larger companies in the first place.
Well, I mean, I would say that when it comes to entertainment, I would disagree in the modern day, because I mean, you have so many different entertainment companies that were created out of YouTube, derivative companies that were Mosh Entertainment, Logan Paul's company, yada yada yada, and those things wouldn't have been able to exist without intellectual property, in my opinion.
No, I disagree. There's a lot of things that got cleared out of old YouTube that just don't exist anymore because of intellectual property. There are a lot of little corny little fan fictions that had spirit and soul with them that don't exist anymore because of IP and copyright laws. But you don't see that. You see what's left, which is Mr. Beast and, you know, all these bigger streamers and all that sorts of stuff.
I wouldn't say that's exactly true, right? Typically the reason why, you know, as a content creator, right? Typically the reason why like the competition is tougher these days is just simply because there's more people getting into it, right?
Well, I mean, I think you're kind of missing what I'm saying here, right? What I'm saying is intellectual property and copyright actually hinders creativity to a large degree. And yes, I'm going to talk bad about Mr. Beast. He's not a very good content creator. I'm talking about the old content from like the late 2000s and early 2010s where people used recycled and copyrighted music and their little short films, and they don't exist anymore is because of intellectual property laws or copyright laws. You know, there was genuine...
How so? Can you give an example?
Oh yeah, the machinima community was thriving back in the day. I loved that stuff as a kid. It was so beautiful.
Machinima?
Oh yeah.
No, machinima was extremely predatory. You do realize that, right?
I'm not talking about the company. Machinima isn't just a company. It was actually a style which people created content with. Machinima was a predatory company. Yeah, but I'm not defending the company here.
But all those people, didn't they not own any of their IP? Wasn't that like a big problem? That was the biggest problem with Machinima.
Wait, hold on, Alistair.
Are we talking about the company or are we talking about people making content on the internet?
Wait, hold on. Are you ANCAP or are you Marxist? I forgot.
I'm a communist.
I want to say
I can't tell.
Overall, like when you're talking about like short films and stuff like that, now we're talking about this is what the market of YouTube wants. I remember Mr. Beast was talking about how his old videos would not thrive anymore, and how he has to compress them into the YouTube Shorts because of how like autistically stupid people's like attention span is now. Like we see a lot of the content now is on like the YouTube Shorts, not necessarily like these long film that we saw back in the day.
Okay, I mean that's fine. Like you know, the attention spans have been getting shorter, but my point still stands: is that intellectual property and copyright actually infringe on creativity for a lot of small creators. It doesn't actually enhance it; it only really protects the interest of big companies.
So, explain to us how like I'm curious. How does it directly infringe not using someone else's work? Like, how does that infringe their creativity?
Okay, so have you seen royalty-free like music?
Now,
one at a time.
Wait, 1 second, please. After Alistair, if you respond, give Midnight a chance to respond, then let's Sue talk.
Right, so I'll go ahead and go.
All right.
Or do you want to go?
No, you
go.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Oh, wait, I didn't realize you're... Oh, wait, are you not done speaking right now? Then you go.
No, I wasn't done.
Okay.
So, like, I think that, like, a great example of that is, like, I think that YouTube has done a much better job in recent days to where if you edit something, like you edit the song, you change the song in some way, you have some sort of creative freedom with it, they normally will be like, okay, it's fine. It's not people who just directly rip content from other people are the ones getting hit with like copyright infringement. If I just take entire like music, the whole song of let's say Godzilla by Eminem, and put it in the background of one of my gaming videos when I was doing multiverses, like there's not really much change in that part of the content, right? You're still just listening to it to listen to it. Like, even though I might be playing something, I'm not changing the fundamental core of the music. Now, let's say if I were to edit it, then I would say that, yeah, I have some creative freedom, and that would be something that I should be able to claim as my own. I don't think adding a video to a song is enough to say that you've changed the song fundamentally.
Okay. I mean, are we? Can I respond?
Yeah. Go and then let's speak.
That's specifically in the domain of fair use on what's considered fair use or whatnot. I'd be more than willing to entertain a conversation about what constitutes fair use, but what I'm still trying to get at is whether or not something is fair use or not. I'm getting at that I'd say intellectual property, copyright, and IP has been actually fundamentally bad for creativity, and you can see it. Everyone remembers the streamer apocalypse. Like, a lot of like really niche, like, you know, individual creators really got destroyed and swept over by stuff that was copyright free.
Well, wasn't the streamer apocalypse literally because I like a what is it?
Hold on.
Oh wait, no, sorry, it was Sue. Yeah.
From what I remember.
Wait. Let's Sue speak.
Yeah.
So then you can go for chops.
Okay, thanks. So I think the topic is getting diverted a little bit. The thing that I think all us should be focusing on is nature property. For an example, it's ironic for Marxism here to talk about the consequences, the positive or negative consequences of intellectual property. Doesn't make sense to me in the first place, because the person should not believe in property in the first place. Like, why are we debating intellectual property with someone who doesn't even believe in the concept? Intellectual or not, he doesn't believe that we should own things. That's the first thing. Second thing, I believe it's irrelevant, the consequences of having intellectual property or copyright laws or penal laws is irrelevant if we cannot call it property. Because, as I said in the first place, if I cannot consider ideas as property, because for something to be property, they have to be scarce. If it's just an idea, if there's no conflict over it, if it's not something that two people has to engage in a conflict or an argumentation, it's not really property. And the third thing, if you want to debate about consequences of having copyright laws or patent laws, I think instead of talking about creators, the pharmaceutical industry would be a better thing to focus about, because that is the thing that can see the externalities of having copyright laws. Okay, thanks.
I wonder, why shouldn't you be able to use that entire song of your gameplay?
Let Food speak, and then you can go Liberated. Sorry, I'd given Food a chance to speak. Sorry, Food, were you on?
Wait.
Did you have something to say?
So,
okay.
From what I remember, it isn't the fact that copyright existed in the first place, is that other creators have abused the copyright system, right? It's that, sure, the copyrights exist in the first place because copyright exists in the first place to protect the creators, but it's that people flag and copyright strike other people's property enough to the point where YouTube goes, hey, we're just going to be on the safe side. We're not going to deal with this. Fuck the legal system. Fuck the lawyers. We're just going to take it down because we don't want to deal with legal shit. We're just going to stay on the safe side. We would rather take this video down than deal with the legal shit. So it isn't that copyrights exist in the first place, is that people can abuse it, right? But you can then argue, okay, but then people abusing it, then it enables a system of abuse, right? But then then we just have to simply regulate that abuse, right? We just have to chip off the kinks and make sure it's not abusive. That's it.
Yeah, I think Sue brought up a really good point with talking about YouTube copyright law and fair use is kind of not that important when we're talking about policy or economic policy. I think a better focus would be pharmaceuticals, and actually looking at what kind of actual long-term effects this will have on an economy. And I think a good example is how would a pharmaceutical company which can't retain ownership rights over at least some form of period of time, not saying that it should be indefinite, talking about Pfizer, it shouldn't be an indefinite IP. It should be something that should have an IP so that they're able to develop income, so that they can research better and better medicines. That is my personal belief. I don't know how you feel about that, the Marxists in the room, or even the ANCAP in the room, but...
I want to talk on this more because I feel like we're looking at this through more of a consequentialist lens, in a sense, but I try to make the more moral case against intellectual property because it is not a scarce resource. It can be used. And like we were talking about pharmaceuticals, if someone were to make a cure for cancer, why should they have the right to patent the recipe to make that cure?
Because then they can find the cure to AIDS, right?
It will give them a artificial monopoly backed by the government.
For what, 3 years? 5 years? I'm not talking about indefinite patents here. I'm not talking about 70-year, generations long patents. I'm talking about, a 10-year patent on something. And then they can make their money. And then they can have enough money to do more research and development. And then the generic version will come out. By how many companies want to create the generic version.
Well, I don't think that even that is a good case because, say, even if they do give them a monopoly on it for just a short amount of time, they're still able to raise prices on it as much as they want. There's no competition.
Wait, hold on. So, I sort of want to make a low-key argument on this stance, right? When you can, for example, I just want to corroborate on what Midnight has said, right? Let's just say you're making a cure for cancer, right? In a capitalist society, right? In a moderated capitalist society where you are making sure that market regulations are in place so they don't abuse the system, so then they don't create a monopoly, right? Profit incentives are really powerful because everybody chases after profit. Profit is great, it's fantastic, okay? But obviously we don't let them keep the profit forever, so let's just say we just let them we let them cook, okay? We let them cook for a few years to develop enough to the point where they develop enough, and then we just let them release the IP so then other people can develop on it and then collaborate and write. So then we have this like kind of free market going, you know what I mean? So then it's like, at the end of the day, why does it have to be that we have to swing to either extreme to the point where, okay, we have to ban this copyright, we have to ban this IP, we have to ban some kind of intellectual property, right? Why can't it be somewhere in the middle where we can find some kind of common ground, some kind of compromise, so then we can find like the best of both worlds, right? Like why can't we have something like that?
Okay, so
Like,
you might I respond, or you want to go first?
I'll start. Yeah, go.
So the thing is there's very, very powerful corporate lobbies, and this isn't just so much about medicine, but I'm also going to talk about copyright in general. I believe like about a decade ago, Disney actually lobbied to get like, you know, posthumous like author deaths. You know, people can retain, or companies can retain copyright like 80 years after the author's death, right? There's a lot, and on top of that, there's evergreening with patents, right? You know, I admire that you're trying to find the middle ground. I actually am kind of really sympathetic to the idea of finding that middle ground, is because, like, you know, I think some creators should actually be rewarded for creating something new, but at the end of the day, right, you know, the more people tinker around with ideas is objectively better, is because people can compete, add new ideas. Because let's be honest here, right, we like to talk about, you know, rewarding originality. Okay, yeah, that's great, but does anyone really have like a purely original idea like from an absolute vacuum? No, not really. Okay, so like a lot of your ideas came from your experience, your background. You didn't just come up with it in a vacuum, right? So it didn't just come out of nowhere. And so that's why I'm kind of against the idea of saying like, oh, we need to lock it down, lock and key, right, and make it absolute properties, because you don't really exclusively own it. There's a lot of ideas that came from other people that you borrowed from, and you know that.
Yeah, and I would say that you should get the profit not by exactly just getting it, but actually allocating it.
Wait.
Sorry?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like, you allocate, so you create the product, therefore you make the profit? Well, I mean, that's kind of like what businesses do,
yeah,
right?
Reptile, I don't like the morality argument either, but you know.
Yeah, but you should, when you create a product, okay, you get the profit by actually allocating it to different individuals, not by using your patent.
Well, no, the patent is just, you're not making money from the patent, you're making money from people not being able to create the same product for a set period of time, and so people purchase your product.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And normally when medications first get patent, they're at their cheapest. I'm pretty sure.
But usually when it comes to like the research and development of something new, whether it be engineering or like, you know, a drug or whatever, right, the first initial costs are like usually the highest, because they've got to pay for all the research and development they did. Now usually things will start approaching their manufacturing costs as time goes on, but you know, initially the price is quite high for like new technologies and stuff like that.
Well, for new technologies, yes, but specifically for pharmaceuticals, because it's so heavily government subsidized, I'm pretty sure that they immediately turn a profit up first batch.
No, you're right about that.
One second. Fed, are you there? You don't respond soon.
Yeah.
Are you dropping out though?
No, I'm.
Okay, I cannot even hear what he's saying. Sorry, Fred.
All having internet issues.
He's not having internet issues. He's on the bus right now. Fed, just text me and give me an update on what you're doing. But I'm going to go ahead and switch you out with political debates. Political debates are just going to get invited onto the server.
Also,
by the way, Warmer's just joined as well. Yeah, Warmer's just joined as well. He's at 11 o'clock. Nah, sorry, you guys are too late. They're too late for their introductions now. So just interact with the conversation as it goes, people. Okay, who was the last one speaking? Is that Midnight?
Yep, that was me.
Okay,
so like I would definitely say that like having, like, I would never work for anything if I couldn't create anything and get the like when you work for an employer, doesn't it feel the absolute worst when you do all this hard work and they never recognize you for it? Now imagine being a creator of a life-saving medicine and not getting the recognition for it.
You know, that's kind of the funny thing is because I actually work as an engineer, so the stuff I actually develop, I don't own the patents to anything I say, right? So, like, yeah, like, again, how is patent laws going to really save that?
Well, yeah, but you could.
Well, I mean, you get the recognition through your wage, right? You get a promotion
Also,
because you came up with a great idea.
Also,
Like-
your name will be on the patent.
And your name would be on the patent if you don't, as far as I'm aware, if you're the creator of said patent, your name is going to be somewhere in the notes, like
And
in
you
the
also get,
citation.
pretty sure usually they'll give you some level of royalties as well.
It depends on the company.
It depends on the company.
But yeah,
Most companies want to retain the patents themselves. Like I said, it's like, you know, again, if you're trying to protect the creator, like intellectual property doesn't do that. That's what I'm arguing here.
Well,
for large,
it's more. Sorry.
It's more for. I'm talking about more like more needed industries, so like medicine, research, R&D. Like, what kind of engineer are you?
Oh, I'm an
Out of
electrical engineer. But yeah, no, it'd be the same thing with like, you know, I don't know how like the doctor's side of things do. I'm definitely more of like, you know, the physics and electronics side of things.
Okay, but if you were to like come out with a new set of like what is it like a engineering electrical outlet, and you were to release that on your own without a company behind you, and you were to sell it like that, your name would still be on the patent. You would still be paid for it.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I don't have the startup capital to do that. So most engineers end up selling their labor in order to survive.
Well, yeah. One of the things that got brought up earlier. I think it like really specifically should be harped on. Like, if we got rid of intellectual property, would that not just make it so the biggest corporations are the only ones that can distribute this type of stuff? Because at that point, individual creators have no room at all to get any sort of royalties from their music. So at that point, only the biggest people that already have the capital in order to distribute these things would be the ones making any profit off of it. So at that point, like all these big distributors, you make something and they're just going to sell it.
Okay. So may I respond?
I mean, I think a good. Oh, okay. I do have an example of this happening. Look up windshield wipers in Ford.
Yeah, I'll start going.
Okay, so like the thing is, what you're describing is things are getting centralized into the hands of the few when it comes to like the lack of intellectual property. It's already happened with intellectual property, right? Even if there's intellectual property, it ends up getting centralized in the hands of a handful of corporations in the first place that own the intellectual property. It really hasn't solved the problem here. You know, creators are not getting what they, you know, they're not entitled to what they create. So.
Well, we started this off. We started this off showing that
they're
they
getting
are.
money.
Yeah.
They're
also,
getting money.
Even in the example that you gave, what is it? You still have to sell your IP to a company. It's your choice to sell the IP.
Okay.
Also, a few examples were given earlier that because of IP law, people were able to create entire media groups like Logan Paul, fucking Mr. Beast. Like, these are all examples that were given that I think are pretty strong examples of individual creators being able to use their like IP laws in order to benefit themselves and, you know, make money.
Okay. So the opposite of that is, say there's no IP law and the company still ends up having it in their hands at the end of the day anyways?
Well, I would
mean,
say
I'd still
that
be getting a wage for it, you know, developing it, and they would definitely be manufacturing and producing it, right? I mean, even if there is no ownership of intellectual property, what's the difference here between these two scenarios?
The difference between is that you have never have a chance under a system without IP law to make money off of your intellectual property, whereas under a system that you do have the chance to own your intellectual property, you have a chance to make money off of it.
I mean, I would just say it's just not Pareto efficient, right? You just don't have the protection so that you guaranteed to make something out of it, right? It's just like it doesn't work. Because like then you would have you have nothing to trade, right? If you were just to like if you were the company and you were just gonna make your IP rights like just open season, what stops an employee from taking your IP and then making it himself with his own by taking your equipment that you designed? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, that's fair. Like, that's why every engineer, when you get hired up to a new company, usually you sign an NDA promising not to do that.
But that is a form, I would say, is be some sort of form of IP law, right?
I mean, technically it's not IP. It's basically like you signed a contract that, you know, you agree not to violate while you're employed with that company when it comes to research and development.
Let's you speak and then one speak.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to state that when you invent an idea or come up with something, it is your responsibility, solely your responsibility, to make that product profitable. Okay, it is not your my responsibility or anyone else's responsibility to create a law so it can make money off it. If your product is needed in the free market environment, if it's needed, it will find itself a place anyways. But it is not justified to create a new law just to ensure that person can make money off that idea. I'm against this concept, be like, oh, a bigger company can take the idea and make more money off it. That doesn't justify intellectual property. We don't have the positive duty to help people make profit. Okay, I'm done.
Well then, like I said earlier, like the Ford example. Sorry. I just want to reply this, please. Can I?
Just let Wormer speak, and then you can reply.
All right.
Wormer, you want to go?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm about to say midnight. You can take it over.
All right. So a good example of what would happen if you didn't have IP law and companies just could do what they wanted would be the Ford windshield wiper scandal. When Ford basically sent in agents to steal individual man's intellectual property from his home, beat him half to death, and was like, all right, this is ours now. So like, I do think that there is some sort of like, also a very long, drawn-out legal battle. It was a mess. Highly suggest looking into it. Over windshield wipers. Mind-blowing, right?
It is crazy what companies... It's basically called corporate espionage. It's actually like something that's fairly common. And of course, like there's little ways that companies like to skirt around where they're technically not violating the law and taking like some other company's trade secrets, right? But like I said, my main my main criticism of intellectual property is that something that sounds intuitively like good. It sounds, it's based off of naive intentions, but logically being carried out, there's really not that much of a beneficial difference that it brings to society.
All right.
That's my argument.
So can you lead me to this logical conclusion?
I mean, well, I've been given a couple examples, not necessarily by you, but, in a hypothetical scenario where we had no IP laws, someone would have their ideas exploited from them and it in the hands of, like, of a handful of companies. But, that already happens. We have intellectual property right now, and, you're just selling it for a wage. I mean, there's really not much of a qualitative difference other than, like, maybe semantically in spirit that, oh, well, technically IP exists.
Well, no, it's the fact that you
Hold on.
You didn't answer my question. You just
Hold on.
Run around.
Hold on. I want to defend Alistair a little bit, okay? The only reason why it's like, okay, intellectual property that is like having is such a tough position to defend is because like the ultimate conclusion in the end is that like ultimately this is like a terrible structure in the first place, right? Like okay, sure, you can say like, oh my god, intellectual like property in the end is like a good thing, overall good thing, because it protects like small creators and it incentivizes some degree of growth, some degree of economic like creativity or whatever like that. But at the end of the day, I'm sure Alistair's like ultimate argument in the end is that, okay, fuck this entire system, let's do it over all the way from the very beginning. This entire thing is just Marxist ideology government, communist government. The state controls, like, okay, the state controls like the creative output of the people. The people does like the creative output according to the state's ideas and etc. Right? So this entire like whether or not this happens or not is dependent entirely on the state. So whether or not we need intellectual property is no longer relevant, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe the first part.
I guess, but then you.
Yeah.
Then
so I'm just saying this is why Alistair is sort of getting like 1v6 raid bossed right now. Like,
I don't think because like I mean you got Red Green who's agreeing, you like have Sue who agrees just for different reasons.
So
I agree. Not getting 1v6.
The James. What if I go ahead and respond to what's her name said? Sorry.
Wait. 1 second. Let political debate go. He was trying to say something.
No, it's fine. I'd rather.
Okay, then Alistair, you go.
All right, so like the thing is, I'm not talking about like state socialism or state communism, whatever you want to call that stuff. I'm actually talking about within the capitalist mode of production right here, right now, that there is no qualitative, very little qualitative difference by having IP laws as opposed to not having IP laws. You know, IP laws were intentional in the fact that they wanted to stop property, you know, creators from being exploited by big companies and big companies taking advantage of the ideas of small creators, but in the end, it still ends up centralized in the hands of like, you know, these large companies in the first place, which I said, it makes no qualitative difference. I'm talking about specifically the capitalist mode of production.
Yeah, but ultimately it's a really hard argument to make, right? Because if you're really looking out like against the big companies and you're doing it for the small creators, you're doing it for people who, you know, you're really looking out for like the masses, for the people, right? Like you want intellectual property because it really does benefit like the smaller creators just as well, right?
Yeah, because I feel. Oh,
Specifically, I think the important part here is it enables them to even exist. Like if you do not have IP law, then you cannot have individual creators. It is always going to be big,
law.
It's going to be big, like corporations controlling everything at that point. Like, well, distributors specifically, because at that point, all that matters is distribution.
Even
I think
under
that's
like
a wrong
communist
assumption.
form. Sorry. Yeah.
Hold on, let Peter go to big.
Even under like the communist form, you still have to force people to like create creative, like intellectual property. Like even if it's still owned by the state, you still have to force people to be like poets and songwriters and different things like that.
Force people to be poets? What?
Like, more or less, I mean, it does fall into the same argument, right? Isn't the whole point that Alistair is making is that even if there is IP law, big corporations end up stealing it from little people, either through their labor for that big corporation or through buying it from them. So at that point, like, wouldn't it be basically the same thing under a communist system? Because you have to, what is it, like the big government in this case is going to have to commission them and to do all their work for them.
In socialism?
Or, well, I mean, I don't know if you're a communist.
I mean, I'm a communist, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, under communists, wouldn't it all be state-run, so...
No, like in communism, there would be the abolition of private property. Property would not be a thing anymore, kind of like in primitive communism where there was no definition of private property.
Oh.
But that didn't, I mean, even as someone who's on the left, I disagree with the economy of communism.
Okay.
I mean, I'm more social democracy. I think the best thing you just do is regulate it.
Okay.
You regulate things.
Wait, does this panel have topics?
Pardon?
What?
Sorry, does this panel have topics, like individual topics, or is this like a
It's
modes of
more
production, basically.
modes of
But
production.
if-
How do we think economy should work? Biggest issues we think in the economy.
I thought we were going to be talking about monetary policy.
We could talk about monetary policy.
I'm
as
up for
well.
that.
Because like because at the end of the day, like IP law, there needs to be a law on IP law. Some intellectual property should not just be stolen. It shouldn't. Now, I would make the argument maybe you strengthen the IP laws. But just to say, to make the assertion, just because you have IP law and IP law doesn't do X, Y, and Z, it's not that good. No, what you do is you strengthen that law so then it makes it harder for X or Y company to take over Z company or take over the IP that they have.
Okay, Mr. Bush, can you define theft to me?
Wait, what?
What is theft? Can you define? You said stealing, so can you please define what stealing is doing?
Yeah.
Stealing? I mean, let's say hostile takeover. So you have these companies that do hostile takeovers over other companies.
Wait. So stealing is hostile takeover. Okay, you know what stealing is? Stealing is.
Okay, Sue,
I
please
own
let him finish his
Okay, I'm
response.
sorry.
What were you saying, Warmish?
What I was saying, right, is if one company takes another company over hostilely, you could view that as stealing, right? And I understand, yeah, it might not be the exact terminology, it might not be the exact thing you're looking for here. I get that. I understand that.
No.
That is the worst definition of stealing I've ever seen in my life. No, someone buying another company off is not stealing.
Great.
Stealing is I have a pencil, I'm in classroom, I have a pencil. Another student, without my consent or knowledge, take the pencil off me by aggression, by force. That is stealing. He took something I own without my consent, without my permission, by aggression, by just using
Hang on.
I mean,
Defend your property. It's yours.
you a hostile.
So a company taking over another company. So when you say hostile takeover, first of all, a company buying off another company is not theft because there's consent involved in it. There's nothing bad about big companies buying out smaller companies. Usually both sides make money off of it.
Disagreeing with that. I'm
Okay,
saying that there's an argument,
But the thing,
again, you're asserting what I'm saying here. When I was not even able to expand, you just said, "Oh, I said one thing. I'm gonna take this out of context." That's not what
even
I'm saying
within the
here.
context.
Okay,
but the word
no, but you're not letting me expand at all. You're just saying, "Here, I hear one thing. Let me know."
I'm one thing that the words you're using within the context doesn't fit the context itself.
so I do remember like this little funny like anti copyright theft like advertisement back in the day. You wouldn't download a car, would you? Like, okay, if you could duplicate cars, is that really such a crime? If it's just an informational thing, it's because like more people having it, it's not depriving anybody of anything, and so having more of something is better.
Because property is a physical resource. Intellectual property is not physical. It can be duplicated, or it cannot be stolen.
Yeah, but if I take your sandwich, right, you know, you're gonna be hungry is because I stole your sandwich. That's a physical material thing that I have stolen from you. If I copy and paste like some code or like copy a movie, like what am I depriving you of? Like, oh, having an extra copy?
but some
No,
yeah.
yeah.
Wait, hold on. But sometimes you spend time to like take the idea from your head and you take time and resources to apply it, right? Like you're not just like simply
Thank you.
You're not
Letters
hold
speed.
on.
Letters
You're not just simply hold on. Let me cook. Okay. All right. You're not just simply oh my god, I'm duplicating this idea. Okay, let's just take a blueprint of a building. Okay, a blueprint of a building is an idea. Okay, it's a map.
Yeah,
all right.
information.
You sure you can copy and paste the blueprint for this building, but what about the architect who like made the blueprint in the first place, right? This person has to like draw up the math, has to do the math, has to calculate it day and night, has many sleepless nights doing it, the time invested into it, probably went through 50 divorces in order to draw up the blueprint in the first place. Like this isn't just something that is like, oh my god, this is intellectual property. There's like nothing, you know? No, this is like probably like 50 different meetings went through. Like blood, sweat, and tears has been poured into this like idea, you know what I mean? And you can't just go like, oh yeah, this is not like a physical tangible sandwich, you know? This sandwich is an invention, it's an idea, it's a concept, it is the hopes and dreams of this architect. Okay, that's it. Okay, that's it. Well, why is that so hard to understand?
It's not scared.
Oh, hey, can I let me go. I want a general consensus in the room. Is time a resource?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
if you
Mark
put
said that.
time into something, an idea, you know, a book is just an idea. You just put your thoughts on the page. Do you have rights to that time, that resource that you put in? It's a finite resource. You normally only got 70 years worth of time.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Putting in
again,
your-
like, I sympathize with that, right? And that sounds like a very nice story, but the thing is that what are the conditions that put that person in that position in the first place? Where they have to sell?
No.
Can I finish?
It has nothing to
Let him
finish?
finish.
All right.
Finish.
So
Okay,
I
I'll
want
let
to
you cook
analyze
first.
the broader society that puts them in the position where they're forced to sell these things to begin with, right? Is because, like I said, I remember the old internet, and I remember people shared ideas for free, and it was great and it was beautiful. And when they started introducing Patreon and all this, like, you know, intellectual property crap, you know, all of a sudden it's a sterilized corporate garbage. It lost its soul. A lot of internet art lost its soul. Okay? Now, so when people are sharing information, it's still objectively better is because in the technicality, I'm not stealing a physical sandwich from you, okay? So more people sharing it is not actually a bad thing. In fact, what should be analyzed is that your conditions and where you actually have to sell your labor to order to survive in the first place, which puts you in a position to sell that art in the first place.
And I wanted to respond to what
It is-
Midnight said. is because, sure, yeah, you put your physical labor into it, but the idea that comes out of it is still not scarce.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the
So
idea-
wait, whoa. You're saying that, so like, the ideas of Hayek aren't scarce. The ideas of Marx aren't scarce.
Okay,
Like, their ideas were incredibly unique for
No,
the
we're going too
time,
far off.
but
No,
whatever.
we're going too far off topic. Okay. No.
Wait. First of all,
At
okay, I don't want to be rude when I say this. The only person that gets to decide whether or not we're going off topic is me and Tony. So, second of all, James and Liberty were going back and forth. I wanted to ask a question to James. James, before we go any further, can we get a definition of what you think scarce means?
Okay,
Finite.
I want to say something.
Wait, just let him.
Anything
Dang, like, you not interrupt
that
everyone?
finite is scarce.
Wait, could you
Anything
repeat yourself,
that cannot-
James? You cut out.
Anything that is finite and duplicated is scarce.
You have to expend physical energy to reproduce something, right? You know, copying is not difficult to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, you could very easily expend resources and energy in order to get an idea, could you not?
Sure.
Yeah, but the idea that
If I-
result is not scarce.
Okay.
Is time
just 'cause-
scarce?
Just because the
Depends on what it's used
results
for.
are scarce. Also, would you not count that the resources and money that you put into it are part of that idea, so they are which are scarce?
The physical labor that you put in is scarce. I will admit that is scarce, but the idea that comes out of it is not scarce. It will be thought up by anyone.
See, I think it's playing. I think we need to stop playing by their court. What I'm arguing is that it's objectively better when intellectual property doesn't exist and more people are sharing that sort of stuff. And you're kind of trying to come at the moralistic argument. We're arguing that it's objectively better for the rest of humanity if things are like open source and copyright laws did not exist.
Well, that's
No.
a argument as well.
Then the
no.
architect would never make it in the first
Okay,
place.
food
There's
shops
no
and warmers.
incentive.
Of course, the commie wants
What
to
do you?
go to private
Okay, so
property.
explain the Linux
Wait,
kernel.
wait,
What's the
wait.
profit motive behind that?
Doesn't have any
Let's
to begin
calm
with.
down.
Bro, one at a time. One at a
Okay,
time.
food shops and warmers than Alistair.
Why would the architect have any incentive to make it, right? Like, we're talking about like an independent architect, right? Let's just say this is like an original inventor, okay? Or some shit. Like, doesn't even have to be architect, okay? Made up the blueprints, made up like the mappings or whatever for some kind of gizmo, okay? Nikola Tesla, right? Whatever, okay?
Okay.
What incentive does this person have to do it if he cannot go, I have made this, I have poured my sweat, blood, and tears into making this. I at least want at least until the end of my life to claim my property on this, so then at least I can reap some of the profit benefits off of this. What is so wrong in saying that?
Okay.
Like, if you went up to Nikola Tesla and said, well, yeah, I guess anybody could make up this idea. That's not entirely true. Nikola Tesla has a unique mind. Not everybody can have Nikola Tesla's like mathematics or his dedication to time and resources, or like the way he thinks, or like his eccentricity. You don't know that, right? Like it, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah,
how to
like,
respond to that.
do you not think? Do you, like, I
Warmers
want to.
than
May I respond? Because I'd like to do a direct
He's not the
response.
average person.
Okay.
Warmers was
So-
gonna say something, then wait. Warmers was gonna say something, then Alistair, you get your chance to respond.
Okay, two things. Number one, I should be able to have the right to have my original workings if I want one, just like how someone else should have the right to do it. They're their own person. They should do what they want to do. Second of all, and before I got interrupted about the hostile takeover thing, I was using that example because if you look at like certain companies, right, they're develop this product, and then a company will go in, will start buying it, start taking over everything, and then it's that the company that owns it now is the one that is reaping all the benefits, when originally it was the old company that did it, right? That's what I was trying to expand over before I got interrupted, but that's it. That's all I was gonna add.
Alistair?
All right. So I was asked, what incentive is there to invent stuff without profits? Well, I'm going to give you an example. People created stuff all the time without any incentive to profit on the old internet, and they did it plenty of times. Another example of something that is magnificent that was created without the profit incentive was the Linux kernel and open source software. All these things are examples of great, magnificent things being produced without any profit incentive. You know what the best part about it? They're not doing it for a profit. They do it because they love it.
They did it because of the free market.
That's a bad idea.
Okay. So I would argue that most definitely when it comes to specifically like things like Linux, Unix, any sort of online dev community, they normally are more left-leaning, and not to include that because it really doesn't matter, but to say that like they created it, it was just because they were part of a hobbyist community in the early internet, right? Like these are hobbyist communities that made stuff for each other that were friends.
Yeah.
These weren't like Linux wasn't supposed to be Linux was supposed to be free for everyone, but it was like free for everyone within our like community. That's why there's so many paid versions of Linux now, right?
Okay.
It's not all free. Linux isn't. There are copyrighted versions of server Linuxes and like different things that they have made money off of. So I wouldn't say that it's entirely like free, right?
Okay,
like,
so can I
there are
respond?
different like, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, sure, like there's variants of Linux and forks of Linux, like Red Hat, which are proprietary editions,
yeah.
and that's perfectly fine. Like, I'm not arguing against that, but it still doesn't detract from my main point that this is something born out of somebody who had a passion towards something and didn't need a profit incentive to make it.
I mean, it was also because of the market.
How?
If the market...
There's no profit incentive.
Hold on.
Let him
I still
please
want
let
to
him
go back to
respond.
the idea.
Let Warmus respond.
I mean,
There's
it
no-
doesn't have to necessarily be a profit incentive. It could be, hey, how about I don't like one of the, browsers. Well, let me make a new one because it could be better than the other thing. How about because I don't like this, I want this to become my own thing, and I want more people to be using it. I'm making the argument because of the market, more people can make their own thing and cause people to go in that direction. It doesn't necessarily just profit. It's also because, hey, maybe I want to make more people convinced to be on my side.
Okay. I want to go back to intellectual.
Can I go?
Wait, let Food Shops go, then whoever was about to go.
Can I go? Okay, thank you. All right. So, I want to go back all the way to Nikola Tesla, all right? Because you guys went way too far, okay? So, the part where ideas can be produced and ideas can be thought about, okay? I just want to make a very clear clarification. There's a difference between thinking an idea at the same time and there's a difference between an idea and a constructed, detailed plan, okay? I want to make that extremely clear, okay? Having an idea, for example, I can think of an idea to make a flying car. We can all think of it, a flying car. Oh my God, it's a flying car. It has wings. It's a flying car, all right? But having that flying car and then mapping out the blueprint, the details, the aerodynamics, calculating the math behind it, the the wingspan, all the details behind that, and then putting it onto paper. Putting it onto paper, putting it everything there. That is a constructed plan. That is a blueprint, okay? The blueprint is something that we cannot think of in our mind at the same time, okay? That idea is something that we can think of at the same time, but that constructed blueprint is not the same. That is not something that we can think of at the same time. These two are completely different things, and that is something that is, etc. Yeah, that's it. That's it, okay? The whole... Anyway, go.
Can I please respond?
Okay, wait. Political debates have been trying to talk for a bit. So let him speak and then you can go, Sue.
You're all good. I just wanted to add on to what Food Shops was saying with where it's the same thing as inventors, where it's like musicians and video makers. They're both like hobbyists, right? They start off doing it as hobbies, but then they'll learn that they can make some sort of money off it and instead free market, and then they'll keep doing it and they'll keep using that thing, same as most inventors will once they've already made a certain amount of profit off of it. It's just a good idea and it incentivizes making new ideas, and you can say that anyone could have thought of said song or said idea, but it'd be pretty hard for everyone to think of it at the same time. And then, as he said, or she, I'm not sure, what is it? Use the same plan and make the same song, same level of decency for it.
Okay, then Sue go, and then I'm gonna go.
So
Okay.
Right.
First of all, I'm going to respond to what something said. Yeah, there is a difference between a blueprint and a guide. You do own the blueprint because the blueprint is actually something hard. So if someone tries to steal the blueprint itself from you, it is an infraction on you because they're stealing something else. The things you have written on the blueprint, however, you do not have ownership over them. So I think we have a problem of understanding the basics of it, of why something is our property. I think we have a misunderstanding. For example, if I'm in an island, in a remote island with someone else, okay, there's the issue of what in that island do I own and how do I own it? Like how is it my property? So let's say there's a stick in the island and we both pick up the stick at the same time. It's a very common example. Who owns the stick if they're picking up at the same time? There's the issue. And here we ask the question, what is property and how do we own it? For something to be property, it has to be scarce, there has to be an finite amount of it, and there has to be a conflict over it, over the same resource. You cannot have a conflict over ideas. And yes, just because you came up with a new idea doesn't mean that idea itself is scarce. It's just you are the first one who came up with it. And for it to be a property, you have to have to physically capable to have conflict over it. Now, and secondly, people claim in here that without copyright law, someone who came up with a new idea is never going to be able to make profit off it, and someone is going to steal the idea or whatever. Someone gave the Ford example. Someone coming up to your house and stealing the plans of your house and then making money of it is aggression because they're literally like breaking into your property. But if someone sees your idea and makes profit of it, that is not stealing because you never owned it in the first place. But it doesn't mean you'll never be able to make money off it. By being the first one who puts in the market, by finding investors through a good strategy, you can be more than capable of making money off of it. You can sell it to someone and become rich of it. It doesn't mean you have to be the one building a corporation. And the last argument is that we are not responsible for violating some property rights just to ensure that someone should make profit off of something. That is not justifiable. Okay, I'm all done.
Okay, then.
Okay, let me respond.
I'm pretty sure we all.
I said I was gonna speak. Sorry. I don't even remember what I was gonna respond, but I still have to do the ad. So if you guys don't know, this is the Neo-Federalist podcast, the Roundtable, where we try to promote First Amendment rights, no matter where you are. Even if you don't have them in your country, you're got them for as long as you're on this podcast. We will speak about just about anything, as long as it's not Twitch TOS, YouTube TOS, or Discord TOS, because we would like to keep our channels. If you are interested in this, you could join our server. I'm going to be going ahead and putting the Discord link in the chat. I'm also going to be going ahead and advertising some of the people that we have on here. I'm going to put Food Shop's link in our chat, put James Liberated's Twitter in our chat, going to put Alistair's YouTube live stream in the chat. You guys should all go out, show them some love. Can have these shows without them. Okay, who was the last one to speak? I think it was Food Shops, and then we're going to go Midnight.
Okay, so I sort of want to get your thing clear. Do you differentiate a difference between an idea and a constructed plan too?
Of course, because the constructed plan is something that's physical that you have.
Okay, and I just want to understand your position, right? I don't quite understand the inclusion of scarcity into this, right? Can you explain that part to me?
The whole field of economics is the allocation of scarce resources. We wouldn't have economics, which is a very wide accepted thing, that we wouldn't have economics as a field itself if resources were as scarce. And the whole reason why we derive property rights in the first place is
the Neo-Federalist podcast is something I was invited to, so I said I had no problem since I do my own stream, so yeah.
Is the principle that starts everything.
Hold on. So if, for example, if an inventor dedicates time
Oh, what is their YouTube?
Right?
I'm so stupid. I'm gonna be linking it in the description once the stream is over. But yeah, no, I've got them. I'll be adding them.
I didn't understand. Can you
Because
repeat the
because
question?
so okay. So if an inventor dedicates time into a project, isn't time a form of scarcity because it's time off your life?
Time itself, as a concept, first of all, is not scarce. As a concept, time itself is not scarce. You do own
Oh,
your
no, it's so
personal
over.
labor that you put into it. You do own it. Okay, someone cannot claim ownership over the labor you put into it. However, it doesn't mean the idea you produce in the end is scarce, because ideas itself cannot be scarce. Those are two different concepts.
Under that logic, Sue, you would
No,
have to say
hold
that
on, hold
any
on, hold on.
non-physical thing
can't even
is
defend
there.
that.
If it's non-physical and not scarce, it doesn't have value.
Wait, hold on.
Can go ahead.
Wait, whoa. Let me.
It can have value. It doesn't mean it's property. That's different.
So you can
I
respond
want a
to
back and
midnight.
forth. I want a back and forth.
So you can respond to midnight. Then food shops can go, and then I'm gonna let Alistair go.
Okay.
I already responded to Midnight that no, like something can be valuable if it's not scarce. But here's the thing: it doesn't mean it's property. Those are different concepts, and I already responded to.
Like under that logic, like water should be like a free resource in most of like let's say the northeast world of the United States. Like water should just be free because it's not scarce.
No, it's still scarce because you're gonna run out of water. But ideas, you're not gonna run out of ideas. Water is very scarce.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, can I?
Go ahead.
Let food shops go. Alistair's gonna go.
Oh my god, I'm so triggered. Okay, so okay.
Stop.
So I don't disagree with you, right? I don't disagree with you that we can think of an idea, right? Again, we can think of a flying car, and anybody can think of that idea, but the specific workings of a flying car, the architecture behind a flying car, that takes time, right? That takes time to make. The specific blueprint behind a flying car, that takes time to make. To put it on paper, that original paper, to put it on paper, that takes time out of your life. Maybe it takes 10 to 20 years for a single inventor, an indie inventor, not a big company, an indie inventor to put that onto paper, right? If you don't have intellectual property defending that, okay, what exactly is protecting that that single inventor, that futuristic Nikola Tesla from like anything else? You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, sure, maybe at the same time, another person on the other side of the world has also constructed that blueprint at the same time, right? Then sure, we can argue maybe something then, but the chances of that exactly happening is obviously very tiny, right? Then sure, maybe you can argue that, but I'm saying, right? There's a you're basically saying scarcity, all right? Because it seems like, at least to me, you're conflating these two whenever it seems like it's convenient for you. That's what it seems like you're doing. But then you're separating these two whenever it's also it's also convenient for you.
Yeah, because
Right?
there's no scarcity of computer code, right? We can. It's just like any other language. It's like learning Spanish, learning English. It is just a language. But then people actually own specific lines of code. So would you say that because they own those things, that is immoral because they created those ideas?
Can people own different words in the English language?
Wait, let James liberate or Sue spawn, whoever that was directed towards.
Do you mind if I get my words
I
in?
was responding to Sue.
Okay, I'll actually wait and I'll let Alistair get in. They've been waiting.
So
for a while.
the thing is like, I kind of like, you keep bringing up Nikola Tesla. I'm actually going to argue that's the opposite of the case, right? Is because intellectual property, Thomas Edison was a patent farmer who actively took ideas from his subordinate engineers and turned them into patents. Like, again, like patents already existed then. They were being used by Edison. Why were patent systems and IP being used to protect people like Nikola Tesla? And on top of that, like, you know, you talk about it's going to protect the inventor, but again, if you had it without it, if you even just imagine the hypothetical case of it without it, right? You know, it's going to end up the same situation that, you know, you're describing. What you describe is without intellectual property. It already is with intellectual property.
Wait, what? Can you repeat that point?
So Nikola Tesla, you use Nikola Tesla as an example of IP laws being needed to protect somebody's, you know, patents or ideas, right? But that didn't happen. Patent laws, IP laws didn't protect any of his ideas. Thomas Edison was an active patent farmer who took ideas from so many people. He didn't actually invent very many things. He was a businessman. He's a business tycoon. He didn't invent things. He took ideas from other people. Where was the IP to protect those creators?
I do not know about the specific example of Thomas Edison or whatever like that, but I would rather refer to current modern examples.
Okay.
Right?
I mean, I could comment
because
on
because it's more improved. It's like we probably worked out more kinks, right? Like I don't doubt that maybe like there's like some fringe that they're not fringe, but like more examples in the past where people have abused systems of IP or whatever like that. I'm sure there's like infinite amounts of examples that you can point out, but I'm talking about right now about an ideal system where IP is used correctly, right?
But can that ideal system ever become a material reality? Like I said, I started from the beginning of this round table and said, I think IP is something that had good intentions. It's just never going to be executed properly because it's inherently flawed to begin with.
That's a bold claim. That's a very bold claim.
I would, before anyone else goes, I would point out the reason why Nikola Tesla got his ideas stolen by Edison is because Nikola Tesla never patented them, so.
Okay.
I was literally gonna say that.
So
like
holy shit!
this,
I didn't even know that. That's
this
crazy.
Isn't a case.
Yeah,
boom. I'm sorry.
This isn't even a case of IP law failing. This was a case of Nikola Tesla getting a lot of his investments and all. Like Nikola Tesla was like really fucking bumfuck poor, and so like he was really only focused on making his ideas come to reality. So whenever he invited Edison to come look at his ideas, he didn't realize that Edison was just going to steal them from him. Well, this wasn't a case of IP law failing. This is a case of someone not even knowing how to use IP law, and because of that, getting something stolen from him.
Yeah, because he was like a backwards, like Serbian first-generation immigrant into the United States. Of course, he's not going to know about IP laws. Like again, but again, how did IP laws exactly prevent this from happening?
We didn't create any IPs.
Like in the hypothetical,
you know. Saying that. So if you would have had it, if you would have had an IP on, let's say, Nikola Tesla's, like he had it on the radio, let's say, because he was the creator of the radio before the Italian inventor created it. If you would have had a patent on it, even though he said, I don't really care that the Italian took it, if he would have had a patent on it, he would have been able to generate profit off of it because he never patented it, and someone else came up with the idea and then patented it. It was then their idea.
I'm also pretty sure there's a perfect case within Edison that like really like cements why IP law is important, because one of the things that Edison wasn't able to steal is the alternating current device, which would allow AC to turn into DC, and because of that he was required to work with the person that created that device and give that person royalties. Like so like there's examples even within your example of IP working to protect engineers. I think
JP Morgan.
I think you're really focusing on this idea of people working for companies and then them stealing and the company stealing it. And this is not really like the majority of the case where IP law comes into effect, right? This is in the majority of cases where IP law comes into effect, this is individual creators not working for companies that want to protect the things that they have made.
Okay. Can I speak?
Go for
it. Yeah, and I'll be right back.
Okay, first of all, we were talking about putting personal labor and work into it, therefore you're justified of owning. No, a property doesn't work like that. You, yourself, as someone, consented putting your time and work into creating an idea. You do own the labor you put into it. You do have ownership over your mind and body. And you do have ownership over the physical thing you created. But this doesn't mean you have an ownership over an idea. And yes, this is actually consistent. I'm not arbitrarily putting distinctions of what is or not, because it all goes back to the same thing. Is the thing you produce finite or not. So the thing you tangibly produced, it's finite, therefore you own it, but the idea of it is not. So with the case of Tesla, even though I don't have a lot of details about how his life went, he himself would work with his own consent into creating something, which is really good productive disavowing. This doesn't mean we own him a right to make him rich. Like, you all assume that we have a positive duty to make some people rich just because they came up with an idea. We don't. It is their responsibility.
Well, yeah, no,
everyone's
if they're
Wait,
running
let
a
me-
business, no one's saying that.
Wait. Let me respond to this.
Hold on.
So, one second. So, first of all, I don't know where you're getting this idea that by allowing IP law to exist, we are directly helping someone enrich themselves. No, IP law is something that you as a person, you as an engineer, have to take like advantage of in order to get monetary value out of your IP. It is not
Musician.
something that we're not inherently just giving you your giving you a patent. You have to apply for that patent. That patent has to be accepted under the regulations of the patent office. Like, this is not something that we're just handing you the patent to something.
You're using, if someone gets accepted by the actual arbitrary standards.
Holy shit, real
how they
comrade
own
Sue
it.
moments.
Okay, you're using the state of force
When you're so libertarian, you
to
become a
ensure that
communist.
only
That's
one
actually my
person can
position
make
back in the day.
money off that idea. If I come with the idea of a new medicine, and if I get a patent off it, okay, nobody else is going to be able to produce that medicine. By the use of state, by the use of literal force, physical force, I'm going to ban everyone else from producing it. I call this an aggression based on the standards that are not arbitrary, that I already derived from logic and the nature of property.
I'm agreeing with that, is because that deprives everyone of making everyone else richer and producing the same thing.
Same here.
So,
first of all,
I mean, is also important for things like music. I mean, it protects the ability for them to, own the music that they have, right? So like Apple Music, Spotify, they have to pay a certain amount of money to the record companies, because if they did not, that would be a breach of intellectual property. Same with engineers. I believe an engineer, they have this patent, they have this property that they had, they should be able to make money from it. If you're creating a product, right, and it's going to be used everywhere, to me, at least in my opinion, I don't know about everyone else's, they should have a right to have some compensation behind it.
Yeah, because like music, I think we can go back to the creator example. I would say music in particular is incredibly complicated to make. It isn't just coming up with an idea. You have to make scores, you have to create lyrics, and scores are sometimes have a lot of mathematics or different languages or different types of like horns and trumpets and music, and like there's a lot that goes into it. So to say that it's just some idea that anyone can replicate it's not true.
Let's say
yeah, Jay go.
Oh, can I go next?
Say that a smaller company creates a cure for cancer, okay, and they patent it. You could make the case that it is protecting them from the bigger companies from distributing it faster. What is the moral argument for preventing further distribution of a life-saving drug?
So, I think there's like a distinction here, right? Because like any idea that someone can replicate it, saying that's an argument against like copyright. Within the domain of copyright, most people don't do that, okay? Most people, when they're trying to make something, they try to be like make a derivative work of that. When it comes to something with like technology or pharmacy related, right? Yeah, that's something that's even more harder to defend, is because that's actually going to the direct benefit of mankind and humanity when it comes to the development of these technologies.
I agree.
But I'm going to even argue in the more bold take that IP and copyright is actually actively detrimental for even like small-time content creators. Like I said, I still remember the old days of the internet, and they were great days. Like, I swear to God, so many of the kids these days, they're missing out. I sound like a boomer right now, but kids are missing out on like the old days of the internet.
I mean, like, what are like the old days of the internet? Like, what's like the good
No,
content?
that people made derivative content, people made small films, they used copyrighted music. Nobody cared back then, and that was great. You know, I got to see like, you know, some really niche little fan stories. Like, you know, you don't have that anymore. You have these, you know, multi-million subscriber YouTubers that have like, you know, really high budget, you know, studios. It's all definitely centralized nowadays. You know, YouTube definitely has lost its soul.
Okay, so you're complaining about better content?
How is Mr. Beast better compared to like the independent filmmakers that existed in the early 2010s? Like that doesn't.
There's still platforms for those content creators.
I mean, shoot, if we're talking about an example of that, Smosh, which was a very big example of a you know, a group of two people that did content creation and were considered the golden age. They just got their stuff back and they're doing exactly the type of content you want. I love them a lot.
Content. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Like these people existed because they didn't use like, you know, I'm talking about like small film producers back in the day that just don't exist anymore. Like good for Smosh.
But
Smosh go on Venmo, on Vimeo,
and now through the ability of getting their company back and everything, they can still make the stuff that they want to.
You know, good for Smosh, but again, like, you know, you're kind of missing out what the crux of my argument. You are, and I'm going to go ahead and explain why, is because I'm talking about where people didn't care about copyright or intellectual property, and they were genuinely more free to express themselves in those days.
I mean, I understand that, but there's also a reason why IP laws in them exist. So then none of those ideas get stolen away.
I know, and then you have no derivative content either, and a bunch of small-time like individual producers who poured their heart and soul into producing a unique scripts.
What do you mean by derivative content? So like when I think of derivative content, I think of like fan fiction. Now I understand that it's creative work. That is changing something, right? But then if it's just like a YouTube video that is just some dude listening to a song and that is his creative work, I don't think that counts, right? That's not creative.
Okay. Sure. I mean, even then, I couldn't really care about that because that's getting in the nitnoy of what counts as fair use, and I'm not really interested in that discussion. I'm arguing against copyright and intellectual property in the first place as actively being harmful to small creators.
Why are you talking about
Hey, stop talking about
because I'm giving instances of copyright and intellectual property actively destroying, you know, small creators. They don't exist
you don't
anymore.
think that
like you
lack
can talk
thereof
about Smosh
could
all day,
destroy small creators?
One at a time.
You could talk about Smosh all day, and you know, more power to them. I couldn't care less. Good for them. But the thing is that those people that I'm talking about, they don't exist anymore.
I mean, if you're talking about streamers who are just reacting to X video, maybe instead of doing that, how about actually, you know, do better?
I'm talking about like late 2000s, early 2010s. Do you really think they did a lot of streaming back then?
You're talking about like the Yogscast days, you know, where like PewDiePie was still playing Call of Duty, and you're talking about
still can do that. I mean, you still can do that. It's just the content is saturated. The content for that is saturated.
Yeah. I mean, streamers became very successful because it was very easy to do it. You don't have to use any copyrighted music. You don't have to write a script. You don't have to do any animations. Like, you know, this is something that you can just basically turn on a camera and just do. Like, you know, that's basically when streamers started to take over.
Why do you have to use other people's?
Yes, and I understand that, but if you're using sounds from other people, they're going to expect that work that they took, they're going to expect that they get profit or money from
a 15-year-old in some mom's basement who makes like random little, you know, short films at their house. Like that's stupid.
You're using examples of people 15. You're using teenagers.
Yeah,
I'm using
creators.
people in the real. You're not. I'm talking about people that are older that want the work that they're taking. They want credit for it. And if they want credit for it, that's the reason why, especially on Twitch and stuff like that, you have these IP laws. In fact, you have these laws about music, you have these laws about everything, because those music groups and all of that want the money that they want.
So how is this like helping, like, you know, the 15-year-old kid that wants to make like a little short film for his family or something like that, wants to upload it on YouTube?
They literally can.
It doesn't.
They cannot make money off it.
That's my point. It just does not benefit small creators, and that's my point.
I mean, then how about this? How about instead of keep doing the same thing over and over again, how about try and innovate and do something different?
You know, you're right. That 15-year-old kid should hire an
But it's just an idea.
That sounds very feasible.
Let me explain. Let me expand. Right? You know, in YouTube, it went from gaming to what? You had gaming, then you had commentary gaming, and then now you have streaming, and then there's going to be something at some point that's going to take over streaming. You know, part of the internet and part of you getting money through those areas is by going into an untapped field and then using that. Good example, sports. For a while, there was a while in YouTube where sports was not really tapped. There's reasons why YouTubers I used to like Troy Dan were popular as much as they are because they went into a field that was untapped, and because now it's tapped, it's pretty much saturated. All the lower people that you're talking about they're not going to get that much people. Okay, and I understand if someone's deep into that, I understand that. But I'm sorry. If you're trying to become big on Twitch, on YouTube, go into a field that is unsaturated and go into it. Because if you do, and you're very good at it, you're going to reap benefits.
Okay.
But you didn't actually address any points or even argue against how this actually protects small-time content creators. You kind of just made an argument for big-time content creators.
No, I'm a host. No speaking over me. Okay. Anyway, so Alistair, Warmish, I want you guys to wrap up this part. IP's been going on since like the beginning of this fucking panel, so I think we're gonna switch over to monetary policy and production policy.
Sounds good.
So go ahead and finish that up. I'm gonna do another ad for this stream and all the creators that are in the stream, and then I'm gonna ask a question. So you can go ahead. So just between Alistair and Warmish for now.
Yeah, Alistair, you want to
go? You want to talk about the monetary policy? Because I'll go ahead and elaborate on what kind of system I support.
I'm gonna ask a question.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, are you done, Warmish?
I mean, I thought you had something to say, Alistair. You were saying you wanted to say something, and then now you want to immediately.
I'm all here. I thought we were going to go to the next topic, but do you want to go back to that topic?
4 hours of IP. We need 4 hours of IP.
No, okay, let's get Tony. What do you want to say?
Run, bitch, run.
That like people still can make this content, they just can't make money off of it because they're using other people's content. I don't see an issue with that. Like, because you're talking about like 14-year-olds and like 50-year-olds. I don't think they want to make money off YouTube. That's not
that's true.
Source of income. So then what's the issue? Like, I don't understand.
Well, that's kind
of.
May I answer?
Yeah, go ahead and answer, and then
of course, like the 14 and 15-year-old aren't trying to make money exactly, but they're still going to get shut down. That doesn't count as fair use. You know that, right?
Why are they getting shut down?
So because they're infringing on the copyrights of I don't know, Universal Pictures or something like that. I don't know. So it doesn't matter whether or not you want to make money on something. That does not constitute as fair use. Just because you're doing it as like an independent thing, that's not fair use. Fair use actually has to be transformative to a large degree. That doesn't count as fair use if you're just doing like a hobby film.
I mean, how about make something that doesn't involve IP?
IP.
Yeah, I know, I agree. You told them to be inventive. Are you going to tell a 15-year-old boy to go hire an orchestra or even Hans Zimmer to make a soundtrack for his little short film? I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, how about
Host is speaking. Stop speaking. Okay, thank you. This was a great topic. I think Midnight did a great job of interrupting. I'm glad that you brought up IP. I think we got a lot of good stuff out of that. We're going to have an after show, by the way. So if you guys want to keep this going in the after show, you can have it. You can have it going. But we're probably not. I don't know. I'll talk to Tony about that. Anyways, so now we're gonna go over to monetary policy in the terms of production and fiscal policy. So I have a good question for this. I'm going to post it in this chat. So, how should goods and services be produced? Who should produce them, and what resources, including technology, should be combined to produce them? So I'm going to post this in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and pin it.
Okay.
So we can go one by one at first. Try to make it real quick for how you answer. If you need a better question, if you want the question repeated to you, just ask me. 1 second before we go any further. G, do you want in? I can add you invite you to speak if you want in. I just invited you to speak. If you want to come in, you can come in. So what is it? Let me do the advertisement. Again, if you are watching, this is hosted by the Neo-Federalists. It's called the Roundtable, although it's not an official name. We're thinking about changing it to something. We don't really have an idea yet. So expect that if you're looking it up in the future, that you might come up with a different name. We're going to try to be hosting these podcasts every week, but as of right now, it's going to be about bi-weekly. So we got to give you some thanks to the streamers on here. First of all, we're streaming at the Neo-Federalists on Kick. We have food shops, lovely food shops here. They're streaming at kick.com/food shops. We have James the Liberated here. You can find him on his Twitter. His Twitter is, I think it's just James the Liberated, right? And with @Liberated James on Twitter. We've got Alistair. He's streaming here as well. That's the Alistair the Great on YouTube. Alistair the Great 3 is their on YouTube. If you're looking for all these people, you can find them in the comment section of the live stream chat on our live stream. Okay, now I'm gonna repeat the question again. How should goods and services be produced? Who should produce them? And what resources, including technology, should be combined to produce them? We can start with food shops.
Yeah, sure. Just capitalist incentive. People are just typically incentivized to produce it via standard business, free market kind of structure. Obviously, we don't really want people to run rampant with abusing the market for anti-competitive practices. Typically, we find anti-competitive practices in examples such as, for example, what Apple is doing right now. We see like mismatching USB cords and etc. So, for example, yeah, like stuff like that. So we obviously need regulations on the market. So I support a kind of like social democracy kind of structure, liberal structure, in order to go with that. I always question other structures. For example, I am extremely skeptical of ANCAP and Marxist and communist structures because in theory they should work, but obviously on the other hand, it's like, you know, there's so many things that you think of, there's so many steps that you can think of, and then when they're actually put into practice, there's a lot of issues. So it is what it is. That's it. Thank you.
Jay, go.
All right. So I believe in more free markets, kind of like what Food Shop said, but without the regulations. And I believe in abolishing central banking, in which there is no way to artificially manipulate interest rates. I think that's all.
Political debates, go.
Goods and services should be produced by the by the companies and people, and that's one way to enforce free market. Kind of also answers who should produce them, and resources and technology should be combined.
Social democracy passes the cost of the third world. Exactly right there.
I'm a big fan of industrialization.
Yeah, you can tell.
Sue, go.
Yeah, I believe the economy should be organic. It shouldn't be centrally planned. Individuals should exchange interactions with each other, and I think consumers are the main determines the price of things. And I don't think there's a dichotomy between theory and practice. I think what a priori works in theory does work in practice.
Sir, go.
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So I support a centrally planned socialist economy. It would be a socialist workers' democracy. Goods and resources would be produced on the basis of need, and you would use input-output planning to produce commodities. And you would have a centrally planned logistics system to also distribute those very same commodities.
Midnight, go.
I would be more in the Chicago bracket of like economic thought, but I do take some Rothbardian takes sometimes. I would say that regulation is necessary to control environmental externalities, but we should allow the market to be free to its utmost capabilities until it starts violating the rights of the people around them.
Vaughn, go.
So I generally support the idea of companies and free markets existing to provide things for people. However, I also believe that there are strong flaws in that the products being produced don't necessarily have the most utility to humanity and society. So I'd ask for how we can make it so the products actually reflect the utility for humans that are consuming them, not just demand for the products. So,
Patriot. I think he's gone. Red Green, Marxist.
I advocate for a centrally planned socialist economic system. I believe that goods and products should be produced according first and foremost with the highest
What a
priority to
homeboy.
need and use value and not for profit. I believe that the workers should ultimately decide in a workplace democracy.
Can you do
what
the
to produce,
emote,
where to
like the
produce,
muscle
how to
emoji in the
produce
chat?
it
Let's
through
get some muscle
worker
emojis for
councils.
Red Green Marxist.
All technologies of the 21st century, ranging from alternative fuel sources to other technologies within nanoscience or material science, should be used to benefit.
You know,
general
I've seen
public in
some
terms
people
of
use like
enhancing
custom emojis in like
welfare,
their
infrastructure,
YouTube streams.
public
I have no
services
idea how to do that. I have to
programs,
figure that out
and
one
also
day.
for technology.
Did War did you go yet?
Nah.
There you go.
So I believe in social democracy. I believe that, you know, companies should be able to make their own stuff, but I believe that the state should be able to intervene, and that the state should be in more control of certain goods and certain goods. Because I personally believe unregulated capitalism and even less moderate capitalism is worse than what a social democracy
Thank
is.
you, my man, Reptile.
G, go. G, do you know the question that we have?
No, I was testing my mic with somebody.
The question is, how should goods and services be produced? Who should produce them, and what resources, including tech, should be combined to produce them? Take a simple intro.
How should goods be produced? Voluntarily by entrepreneurs in a free market.
Fed, are you gonna participate or?
Can you hear me well or no? Am I
Yeah.
cutting out?
No, you're
I'm
good.
good. Okay. Well, I believe that the free market is best due to how the economy can be very unpredictable. I do believe centralized banking is pretty decent as well when it comes to the problem of the money aspect of the median between two trading partners. I also believe that the government should be involved, not the private sector, when it comes to things like infrastructure and city planning, just due to the fact that the government would be more efficient because they're trying to plan it out for more people needs, and how infrastructure is significantly easier to predict the outcomes compared to markets.
And finally, me. I just think most of the time it should be private companies producing the goods, but for sectors where there's market failures or public interests at stake, I think the government should get involved. I don't think American is here, so now we go to free time. So now you guys can start talking with each other.
I just I sort of have a critique of Marxism, I guess in general. If you
Has Alistair.
if you
That's
if you
funny. I like that.
how is it
Oh.
feasible to I don't know what that was, but how is it feasible to control every single part of the economy to the point where you can meet supply and demand based on famines and human mistakes and human variables and selfish people and people backstabbing you and enemies from outside the state? How do you how can you do every single part of that, right? Because if we can look into the past, right, when you do try to micromanage every part of needs and non-needs and stuff like that, a lot of people die, right? From what I remember from Mao's period or whatever people die of hunger. And then when we look at Russia in the past, people die of hunger. When we look at other communist regimes in the past, people die of hunger because of just because of food mismanagement, so it's when it comes to these kinds of issues, how are you supposed to manage it without something incredibly futuristic and fictional, for example, such as a super AI that would instantly be able to program exactly which things are missing, or whatever like that.
Okay.
Just my general question.
Okay, yeah.
I would
mind if I respond or?
Hey, Vaughn, I want Vaughn to respond,
Alright.
and Alistair, and then political.
Cool.
Can I just say, for instance, with the food supply, I don't know if centrally planned economies are necessarily relate to who would be producing stuff. For instance, when you have a lot, for example, banning the sale of some unhealthy foods would not necessarily necessitate a food crisis in a country, right? So I'm just not. I would agree that in the past, obviously, central planning had led to disasters, around food harvesting, removal of private property. But I'm not sure if central plan itself is the problem we can say.
Well, it's more like at least in a when I imagine a capitalist society,
I'm about ready to unload on her.
at least you allocate some of the work to the movement of the free market, right?
Matrices, everything.
But then in like a kind of Marxist society, a lot of the power goes to the state, so the state has to like micromanage a lot more. But then because of human error, because of mistakes that go wrong, even if you're trying the best that you could, it just seems like there's at least one thing that goes wrong. You know what I mean? Like there's just too much that happens.
Okay, mind if I go?
Well, I think it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, so like, funny enough, demand's not actually hard to predict. Okay, what I mean by that is that the way companies predict demand isn't going to be much different how a planned economy predicts demand. It's going to be done through trial error and like basically analyzing previous sale data. That's basically how it's going to go, and you're going to forecast in the future that a planned economy is going to do the exact same thing. On top of that, when it comes to the individual state-owned enterprises, likely they're going to be predicting their own demand internally rather than the entire planned economy doing that. The point of a planned economy is to organize production on the basis of meeting that target demand, but also being aware of global information of how to meet that demand in the first place, is because usually when you're producing things, they require inputs. And so you have a large interdependency between firms within this very same economy, and you can actually account for this using input-output matrices, which was made by Wassily Leontief.
I want to respond to that.
Yeah.
We're getting into the philosophers. I like this.
Wait, hold on. Can we slow down a little bit?
Yeah, take some time
so I can understand what you said. No. Just next time we go a little slow. I'm trying to process.
Try to go a bit slower
What
next
you're
time.
saying.
Speak. Also, political debate was the one that's supposed to respond next.
Okay.
What is it? What I was going to add to what Food Shop said is like when you do resources according to people's needs, and you never make enough for like excess, which is the reason why capitalism is usually better, is because they make excess food according to like they're able to get more capital from selling excess food and having all this excess that isn't in that plan that you just said, Alistair, where they have a set demand, because once they make that set demand, they don't need to make more food after that. But then you don't have any extra after that, and that's the problem. Is if you say were to need extra because you didn't meet an actual demand versus what was said on said demand, then you have a food shortage, which is why most communist societies run into said food shortage.
So I'm going to go ahead and respond to that. There's two parts to that. Okay, so like localized shortages aren't going to be a problem, is because when you have Leontief input-output matrices, you can actually track dependencies between production. That's not really a problem. And on top of that, say you wanted to double the production on certain sector of the economy, I don't care. It could be sandwiches, it could be widgets, who cares, right? There's a dependency list that you have of ingredients and you need to actually produce that commodity. You can actually linearly scale that with input-output matrices and actually know what you need to produce in other sectors of the economy to actually meet that target demand. That's actually entirely feasible.
But your target demand doesn't add any excess. That's the problem, is that you don't have excess. If the actual level of demand is higher than the form of demand said in that, you don't have any excess for it because your demand's already met.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that you can actually double production fairly easily. That's what I'm trying to get at. If you don't know what true demand is and you find out it's actually twice as much because you need twice as many sandwiches, yes, you can back calculate the ingredients as well to figure out how you can meet that demand target. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Alistair, I wanted to respond to something you said earlier when you said it wouldn't be much different from companies doing this. Since where companies rely on factor prices in an economy,
yes,
whereas a single monopoly would not rely on factor prices because there are none.
Okay, yeah, I can address the ECP. Okay, so the interesting thing of how production and prices are going to be accounted for in a socialist planned economy, which is why I'm a proponent of labor voucher planned economies, is because price within this economy would be denoted in the amount of physical work it takes to produce something. And so, yeah, you actually do have price information. It actually goes in
then is that no different than than having property?
How's that no different than having property?
It's just a voucher that tells you. It's just no different than a voucher of fiat currency, right?
I mean, depends on whether or not it can circulate. The qualitative difference between a voucher and a set of currency is that you can circulate. You know, vouchers in the traditional sense are a one-time use, right? Once you go to buy something, that voucher is destroyed upon the consumption of that article of a good or a commodity.
I mean, but it's still a form of currency. It just has a denoted amount of food or product.
If you go to look at like any economics like text, when it comes to defining money, usually it says circulation is like a pretty hard quality for something we consider a currency or money.
You can just throw banter out there or barter out the window.
I mean, you can still barter.
Well, what's the difference between? But that's still bartering property, right?
Okay, and?
Oh, but you're a Marxist, right? You're socialist, I guess. So it's a bit different. I would say that doesn't apply. Never mind.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad.
It's all good.
I mischaracterized your opinion.
It's all good.
No, but so I would definitely, even though I don't agree with Mises on everything, the idea of the ECP I think is pretty. Even though that we have models today that are better predictors, just like businesses, just like any sort of economy, even it's going to have a falter, right?
Okay.
It's going to have a crash. And so it's going to be hard to predict what the needs are for society, especially over a large geographic area. That's why federalism is based. Over a large geographical area, to know each individual region's needs and the cost and the logistics needed to take those resources there. Because if you look at Africa, like we have enough food in the United States to feed everyone, and it's not greed holding us back from feeding everyone, right? It is just the amount of logistic and information that requires you to do it, right? It's just so much to keep track of. That's why we always burden it on the individual to keep track of their own needs and their own wants, because then the government isn't constantly like just working all the time, right? It's not going to be like just there's less chances to fail.
Yeah. So it's kind of,
and that's why like capitalism is a more stable system, because you're not worried about, even though that communism or socialism might be a longer, more stable system in periods, its crashes are going to cost hundreds of millions of lives.
So the interesting thing about the economic calculation problem when it comes to like knowing the local needs of that stuff, right? You know, obviously localizing things when you can is probably better than trying to make everything global information. When you mention about, you know, the sheer amount of information processing that you need to do to actually go about planning the economy, that's true, but it's kind of interesting how the Soviet Union turned into a second-rate world superpower because they were doing everything by pen and paper, and a lot of the times they were doing the calculation with like an employed staff of like 3 million people. The funny part about that is you still have to do the calculation in capitalism. The cost is still there. It's just a lot of these things are signaled through price.
Well, no, I would say that the calculation is done on the individual basis rather than an entire group, right? So, like, the market, then the people determine the price by how popular or unpopular a product is, right? Or how luxurious or how rare something is. It's like Pareto efficiency. That's economy 101, right? So, like, to determine what the needs of a populace are, and to match Pareto efficiency so that the max amount of people are happy with the bargain that they have struck would be almost impossible for a government to determine.
So,
and a voucher system doesn't actually have individual valuation.
So here's the interesting thing, right? There are two things. Okay, so personally, I reject the marginal theory of value. On top of that, when it comes to utility value, Marx acknowledged utility value. Number 3, when it comes to labor vouchers, you're still going to not buy things that you're not really into in the first place. And the last thing I'd like to really get into, right? Okay, if the marginal theory of value was true and utility was determining price entirely by itself, then subjectively price would be different for different people. But the thing
I never said utility was the only thing that gives something value, right? It's just the fact that it's finite or non-finite.
Okay.
Like, so like if like just like the IP debate, like I agree that like ideas and time are finite. So like when you have something that is finite, it is still worth more value than something that is not finite, regardless of how the government views it, right?
Okay. Yeah, so you can agree that there's like a sociality, and it's not just like individual people that are like, okay, cool. I can respect that.
Because people don't always buy what's best for them, right? They make mistakes, but I think those mistakes are up for the people to decide and not the government. Right?
Okay. So like,
because when the government makes a mistake, it affects the whole instead of just affecting an individual.
I guess can I ask a question about this? I'm a little confused because you guys are conflating a bunch of different things: state central plan of the economy Failures
Well,
of state central planning to create a socialist model, failed state central planning of the economy, which in socialist countries was frequently focused on building up the defense industry at the expense of the civilian population, and general central planning for consumer products. Like these are all, I feel like these are all being conflated together as a like if you just say the economy, you know.
Are we talking about the micro or are we talking about macro?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm confused about exactly why you guys are going with this because
I'm talking about micro.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if
I
it's
don't
a
know
bad economy, then isn't that macro inherently?
You're talking about central planning. That's a macro. It sounds like a macro thing.
Well, if we're talking, but I believe in more of a microcentric economy. So, like, I believe in the market. So, of course, I'm going to talk more about the micro plan section of the planning because I don't believe in any. I believe in very little central planning. The only central planning I believe in is the idea of government protecting its populace through environmental externalities. Is if, like, the company is dumping shit in your backyard, right? Like,
If I was to talk about micro-planning of a socialist state, of a Soviet socialist state, it was normally specifically, we need to produce X amount of steel, we need to produce X amount of tanks. There wasn't a, we need to produce X things that consumers need so that they can, so that we can have a better state. It was specific goals that the state set. You know.
Well, no, we were talking specifically about how central planning governments cannot provide enough resources that individual populace need throughout an entire nation, right? Because like every individual has different needs, different wants, like every person's different, their nutritional values different. Like it's like you're talking about such a lot.
Hold on.
That's complete.
Just 1 second. When you guys are finished, I want to ask Alistair something to clear up his position.
Okay, go for it.
Wait.
Fruit Chops was gonna say something.
Let Fruit Chops, and then you can ask the question.
I just want to clarify. Midnight, are you? We might be making different arguments here, or not even different arguments, asking different questions, I guess. But Midnight, are you saying like a central plan economy? Do you mean like the communist kind of economy?
Yeah, I'm talking about how they plan out what each individual person's needs and wants are. But with a free market economy, it's more micro heavy. So like you're more thinking about like how the consumer views the market. So like of course we're gonna be talking about different like groups of ideas because they are entirely because like one's more macro set, one's more micro set. Like
so we agreed that like the it's probably better to use the free market in order to let the free market balance itself out, right?
Like
yes, it's better for as little government intervention as possible because government normally makes mistakes for the entire populace. Might improve a certain group, but it doesn't improve the entire nation.
Okay, but
unlike...
if you're specifically referencing communist and socialist governments like the USSR and their central planning abilities with respect to consumer need,
I didn't reference any. I just referenced the ideology, but go on.
You sound like you're just cherry picking the Soviet Union while they were like.
Wait. Let Vaughn.
Dude, chill out.
Okay, but first of all, Vaughn is gonna finish what he's saying. The G is gonna speak because it's supposed to be.
Okay, like it's confusing to me because most of these like countries, and especially social countries, weren't that interested in consumer needs. They were interested in. We need this, we need this thing done for industrialization.
Yeah. Okay, that's my question. That's basically my question.
Okay, well, let Vaughn ask it.
Let me just finish really quick. So it gets really confusing when you're saying that, like, if the Soviet Union had centrally planned according to actually providing things for its citizens and not building more tanks or building more steel, we don't really know how it succeeded because it never really did that. So I guess I'm confused as to, and most people need the same type of food. There isn't like a person who's like, this person needs tons of food, this person needs no food. What? So I guess I'm not saying I agree with central planning, but I just don't think these hypotheses necessarily say anything about the actual utility of central planning. So go ahead.
All right, so I think my question is, gets more to the point here, right? So Alistair.
What's up?
I didn't really hear your whole position because I cut out on my end, but you did say something like about labor vouchers, right?
Yeah.
Just like they get these from their whatever where they work, and they go to some authority, say like I need this, like I need food, water, whatever, toilet paper, you know what I mean? And they like they say the amount, like I need this amount, you know. Does it just like correlate to like the labor vouchers? Is it just the state that decides that?
So
No.
So how it's going to work, and this is why I say like this labor voucher currency is probably more of a commodity-backed currency, is because everything produced on the plant economy, the money that is printed into existence is going to be backed by the commodities on that plant economy. So like, you know, if it's toilet paper, if it's like random like furniture, yeah, that's going to be backed up on the plant economy, and there's going to be a proportional amount of labor vouchers in circulation in existence to represent those material goods. So yeah, you can still purchase those things in the plant economy.
Right, but how do you know like of how much something you need to produce? Like how much is like the right amount to give somebody, you know? Like
that's an excellent question. That's a great question that many firms to this very day in the capitalist mode of production are still trying to answer themselves. And so it's going to be done through trial and error at the state-owned enterprise level.
Trial and
Well,
error.
no, they do determine the value through competition and how the people view how much it is worth, right? People determine how much it's worth if they buy it.
Yeah, that's going to be the same case like with the state-owned enterprise.
That's all determining what, like when labor voucher, you know, is worth, right?
No, what I said is I definitionally said that the prices of commodities are going to be proportional to the amount of labor embodied in the production of those commodities, and there's going to be an equivalent amount of currency to represent those commodities on the plant economy, right?
It just seems like
So
capitalism.
how, give an example.
There just seems to be too many what ifs, right? Like in a communist society that you're describing, like what if there's human mistakes? What if some like fucking convoy crashed? What if this happened? What if that happened? What if a locust like season comes? What if a whatever? Like there's so many micromanagement happens. Oh, what if like Bob didn't like Tom over there and then murdered him? Like there's so many little things that you cannot account for single-handedly alone, but that a capitalist society can actually account for.
Really? So those things don't happen in
alone,
capitalism?
right?
That was like the basic argument.
In a free market, a competitor can pick up the slack.
In a free market, it would automatically balance out each other,
you
right?
just
Like,
gave the example of a convoy
Because-
crashing. Has
no,
that not already
we
happened in
have extra.
capitalism? How is this ubiquitous or unique to socialism?
no, the
Yes,
no,
but
no,
a
no, the
competitor
problem-
can come and
no, no,
pick
no,
up the
the
slack and
reason-
see the gap
wait,
in the
hold on.
market.
Wait, hold on.
Let
Wait,
food
chill.
finish.
Hold on. So I'm just saying, right, from a purely good faith perspective, right?
All
Right now, we're living in a society where we already see how things work. Things are already in practice. We see like, okay, and then we can slowly begin to improve incrementally from here. We can slowly start to work out the kinks. We can improve from here, right?
Okay.
But then what you're proposing is something where we're taking an enormous step into something that is entirely in theory. Okay, you're saying, okay, this theory, but then when it's actually put into practice, I don't know.
Okay.
Who knows like if this will work or not? Who knows if like this like fabric system, array system will work or not? Like there's so many what ifs. Who knows if this will happen? Because there's a lot of things where you can say in theory, but then when you're actually putting into action, a lot of things can just go wrong.
Okay,
You know,
so
and that is why I'm skeptical of it.
All right, so everything you described already happens today under capitalism. That's not something that's going to be a problem in socialism because it already exists in capitalism. And socialism is not this one band-aid that fixes everything kind of panacea, okay? I'm not trying to sell it as. No communist is trying to say socialism is one side, size fits all, fixes all problem like panacea. That's stupid, okay? And number two, right? So you said that, okay, there's a lot of what-ifs and therefore we shouldn't try it. That said nobody who invented a new system ever, okay? New things come in and out of being all the time, and to say that it's never been tried is not actually an argument against it. That's in fact an argument to try it.
Okay. I wanted to respond to your earlier when we talked about labor vouchers, how they would be sort of correlating with the labor, right? But that doesn't exactly equate to value, because if somebody were to dig a hole, okay, like 6 feet on 6 feet, no, like 30 feet under. Okay, that's a pretty deep hole, right?
Yeah, I agree.
But if he were to dig a hole that was, let's say, like 10 feet, still deep, but less deep, and they somehow find gold.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this isn't really like a realistic situation, but just imagine.
So, So you just threw at me the mud pie argument, like, you know, not all labor is useful. I get that, right? And the funny part is neither did Marx ever say that, you know, all labor is just automatically useful, right? You can bang rocks all day, and that's not going to be producing any utility value for anybody. Funny enough, Marx never actually said utility value didn't exist. He just didn't argue that it goes into the determination of value itself. That's what Marx is arguing about. So, yeah, sorry.
Well,
how would labor vouchers? How would how would things like stagflation and inflation affect labor vouchers?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Okay, so how inflation and deflation would work in a labor voucher system is there would be practically none unless if there is an actual change in physical production itself. So I don't know if there was a supply shortage, like the oil crisis in the 1970s was a physical supply crisis. So, you know, people obviously had to work harder to try and figure out where to exactly get new oil from, and so obviously prices skyrocketed and all that sort of stuff, right? So unless if there's actual changes in physical productions, it's not going to suffer the ills of a fiat currency.
All right, so then how would your labor... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, but inflation is a naturally occurring thing, right, in any means of productions, right?
No.
So, like, if I... Yes, it is, right? So, like, if we have... Yeah, we saw this throughout history, right? We saw this through the boom of the United States, right? When they massively increased their manufacturing, people got paid more wages, then they bought more items, but then the problem is that they overlended, and then we have, like, the boom and bust cycle is natural.
So here's the thing, right? No,
No,
inflation is not a
it's
given,
not.
especially with gold-backed currencies. Gold-backed, commodity-backed currencies actually have the problem of deflation, is because when you have an economic expansion that grows too rapidly, there's not enough money to actually represent the wealth being created in that economy, and you have deflation, which often triggers a depression.
Alistair, I want to ask you, how do you solve, like, if I want something that's like not being currently produced, if you have no entrepreneurs, you know, you don't.
Okay.
There's no entrepreneurs, you know, coming up with new ideas without any like profit incentive to do so, you know, or any other incentive, you know, just labor, you know.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, I'm not actually in like favor of a fully like super like everything being planned like to mom and pop shops. I'm actually fairly supportive of worker cooperatives until they get to a certain point where they're like heavily relied on by the broader economy at large to integrating them into the planned economy. But I have no problem with people starting worker cooperatives. So if you had like some bright idea, you could probably go to like the local like workers council and be like, hey, can I get a loan for this worker cooperative that I'd like to start with me and my buddies? So yeah, that'd be entirely feasible.
Well, how would you get a loan if there's only worker vouchers? Like, is it going to be paid in worker vouchers, but then would just be a currency that is circulating?
That's how you buy capital, right? I mean, it's being produced on the planned economy, and it's being denominated in this labor voucher currency, so I'd assume you'd have to buy it in a labor voucher currency.
Okay, so it is.
But even
So
then,
it
it's
is a
still form of
currency.
Yeah.
Okay, and?
Then it's not.
Well,
What
you're
if the
arguing
state
that it
says, I
wasn't
don't
a
think your idea is valuable? What if they say, I don't think it's gonna work out, you know?
Did you know
like,
a
what if
board...
they say that?
All right, that's a good question. Did you know a board of capitalist investors are equally likely to say that if they don't see an immediate ROI? You're going to have to convince some group of people to give you money to invest in your ideas, whether it be capitalism or socialism.
Right, but I can go to somebody else in a free market. I don't have to go to just the state.
Also,
you know what I mean?
Okay,
also,
where are you going to go?
Also, under the current system, you don't have to give them a reason for why they're going to loan you that money. If you have the credit, they will loan you that money. Like, if you're talking about investors, you have to give them a reason, sure. If
Yeah,
you're talking
that's
about
what I'm talking
getting
about.
a loan in a capitalist economy, if you can apply for a loan at one bank, if they tell you no because you don't have good enough credit, you can apply to a loan at another bank. That's what she's trying to say.
Well, the investors, we're talking about investors or loans. They're qualitatively different. Investors are another thing.
Well,
It's
you
because
brought
you're
up
going to... I didn't bring up... yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Not one firm of investors.
Whoever you're going to try and convince, whether it be your grandma or like some business tycoon, right? You're going to have to convince somebody.
Right, but I can, if they don't like my idea, I can go to somebody else.
Yeah, you can do that within like a socialist economy too, because there's multiple layers of government that'd be probably willing to invest in an idea. And on top of that, there's probably larger funding for that stuff anyways. You're going to convince somebody, you better have an immediate ROI, otherwise you're not going to be able to convince a board of capitalist investors.
Can I say something?
Go for it.
The concept of labor vouchers exists in the first place because socialists or communists think that it is unethical for someone to make money out of money. So can you first answer me, why is it wrong for us to make money out of money so that we would need something like labor vouchers?
Okay, yeah, cool. Where did that money come from is the more important question. If you got turned money out of money, right, you're able to buy the real products of other people's labor, and so you're appropriating the labor of other people's, because that money didn't come from nowhere, it was appropriation through the ownership of property.
That is to say you extracted a surplus from your workers and you did not actually pay them what they're actually worth in the marketplace, because if you did, you could not actually turn a profit.
Okay, so here, it came to the real question here. Why do you think it is bad for me to make money? I'm not making money off of them. Okay, they're selling me their services in exchange of something. Why do you think this is bad?
I mean, you're just kind of rephrasing what you said earlier. Like, I'm going to give you the same answer. You know that, right?
What I'm trying to say that I hire someone, okay? I hire someone. I start a business. I start a bakery. And I find someone to work in the cashier registration. And I look at the market, of the labor market, what cashiers are usually get paid. And I look at what I'm able to. And I say, these are the conditions you can work. This is what you can get paid. And the person here looks, okay, another place offers this, another place offers this. I like your conditions. I like to work 8 hours a day, and I accept getting paid $15 an hour.
Okay.
And then this person works for me.
So I got a question.
I do not see any moral justification what makes this exploitation.
Okay, that's a good question. So, do you believe? Okay, so if you have the choice between, say, dying of starvation and working for poverty wages, right? Would you say that's really a free choice?
I'm saying that you're doing a lot of fallacy because this is not a dichotomy. This dichotomy is wrong.
I'm sorry, say again?
What are labor vouchers? What are labor vouchers?
So you can't be forced.
Okay, let's calm down for just a second. So Sue's about to go after me, but I wanted to point out something. Since we've got a lot of fucking Marxists here, I'm going to ask a question towards the ancaps in just a second. So Sue, you go to respond. Go get a little back and forth going between each other, and then I'm going to ask a question.
I'm claiming that the dichotomy between, oh, you're going to be a cashier in a bakery versus you're going to die out of starvation. Personally, for to not die out of starvation, you have to do at least work. You have to work at something. This can be a cashier, this can be an engineer, this can be a doctor, this can be a teacher, this can be a garbage cleaner, this can be anything, but you have to work. You don't have a right to be provided money out of something, and you yourself will agree with it. Okay? And you have the free choice throughout your whole life to determine what your career is going to be. You have your whole life to determine what labor you're going to do. And you do not own the rights to be paid a huge sums of money if the labor market doesn't provide it. You don't have the right to force others to pay the fruits of their own labor to you because you make certain choices in your life.
Okay, so you agree that you have to work to eat, and so if you don't take a job, you're gonna basically starve.
What's the difference between that and labor?
I agree with that.
I'm not saying this doesn't exist, right? People have had to work to reproduce their material existence since the dawn of time, right? But how is this a free choice? You don't have a choice in working.
Your whole premise,
you have a choice.
I have to add this. Your whole premise is based on this fundamentally flawed notion that capitalism, or for that matter preceding it, feudalism or slavery, are voluntary modes of production when they are not. You are bound by your material conditions and your class circumstances. Working people have to sell their labor to somebody else. And while I do believe that people should have an equal liability to work, my objection, and the objection of Marxists globally, is that this is a fundamentally exploitative arrangement which you refuse to understand because you believe and rationalize that it's voluntary, when it's not.
But for something to be voluntary, you should have the freedom to do it without coercion. That's the thing.
Well,
you are being coerced. That's what you don't understand.
Even under
Let Sue respond.
Ooh, it's about to get good. I'm ready to jump in.
Nature cannot force you or something. The fact that you will feel hungry if you don't cook dinner doesn't mean you're coerced into eating dinner. It just means it's a rational decision for you to eat dinner, or else you're gonna starve. Coercion would be if I came with a gun, put a gun in your head, and said, "Eat that dinner, bitch." Now that would be coercion. The conditions of the human nature are not coercion. You're mistaking these two.
Okay,
because I know you Marxists are gonna argue Sue's definition of coercion. Let's just use human-based coercion.
Okay.
All right.
Even then, it's still a...
Okay, so as it relates to these problems of production and most moral system in terms of lack of coercion, for the ancaps in the room, how would you solve these problems? How would you make a more ethical system that accounted for the modes of production, the needs of production, the needs of the consumerist class, while still, like I said, being moral under your eyes?
Can I answer?
Yeah, you can go.
He was coerced into asking this.
Okay, G go. Okay, you go. Sue will, and then G will go, and then Liberated James can go, and then we can all respond.
No, can I go? Okay. Oh, all right.
So
You
should
go.
I give the anarcho capitalist answer, or
You can give your ANCAP.
Yeah, let Sue go.
Yeah.
Okay, the anarcho capitalist answer in that is that it would be moral if people voluntarily exchange in these interactions. It will be moral if we recognize people's property rights. There is only one right according to anarcho capitalism, and that is the right over the ownership of your property, and this includes your body and your mind and everything you produce, okay, and everything you buy, etc.
Is my audio level better, John, now? I increased it by 2 decibels. How does it sound? Let me know.
Values of things are determined by the consumer, by the client, by those who are buying it. Because if I decide that a box of spaghetti, if we collectively decide it doesn't worth anything, nobody would buy it, and that would be worthless. That is as basic as that. The spaghetti is not valuable because it exists and so on, because we as consumers like to eat it for dinner.
Okay.
Hold on.
Wait, let him please.
Just one more sentence. I believe that the economy is more productive and efficient when we let the free markets do it, because these people, because they have profit incentives, they calculate things like production possibilities, frontier, the opportunity cost of things. They look at the seen and the unseen. They look, okay, I can produce orange juice and milk. Which one is more profitable for me to produce? Which one does cost less? Which one I can charge more? Which one is the clients are more willing to buy? Because they do these calculations to make profit off it, they find the most efficient ways to produce these. The government doesn't do that because they think they have infinite resources. They think taxation is infinite. That's why we have things like inflation, because the government treats money like it's infinite. The free market wouldn't do such a thing. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, so to the libertarians in the room for like the sufficient answer, or would they like to give their answers?
I'd like to answer, yeah.
Okay, G, you go.
So, using profit loss calculations, in a free market is the only way, the only economic system that, tends toward equilibrium with supply and demand, meeting that point.
And what is it? Even then, you still have that excess. That's the whole thing with the free market society, is that you can have an excess, and if there's so-called has a uptrace in demand, then you have excess that you can sell for.
Okay,
but it tends towards equilibrium. Does your system tend towards equilibrium?
Right. Okay,
Wait,
one
can I go?
second. I said to liberate. Okay, now James is gonna go, and then it's gonna be food shops, and then midnight, and then Vaughn.
But if I get a word in
Not
too,
fruit
at some
shops.
point in there?
After the list that I just gave you.
Alright, sounds good.
So, okay, liberated, did you want to give an answer to that?
Pretty much everything they've already said, but like I said earlier, free banking is very much preferable. That's all I have to say.
Okay, now we're gonna go. I think it was midnight, then food shops, then Vaughn.
All right, so now I will differ from the ANCAP position where I do understand, because I am in favor of more of the ideas of like Thomas Paine and like proto-socialism. The ideas of most of my ideas will lie that yes, no, food is a necessary. You need it to be employed. It's a necessary thing, even though it may be evil. It is a necessary thing you must do to survive. It can be immoral, it can be horrible, you might hate your job, but sadly, we don't live in a perfect world. We can talk about the morals of the existence all we want. It doesn't mean that we're going to have an actual beneficial society or a society that works well together. So, like, to say that, like, oh, we need to have open markets, anyone could do what they want, discriminate, pay people 30 cents on the dollar because that's what the market price is for, because then farmers would be worth absolutely nothing. So, like, when we're talking about, like, what is value when it comes to something in a market, it is what the people determine are the goods or the values on the market. But that doesn't necessarily mean that government can't subsidize nor assist with things on the market that would benefit the majority of society. Like, for example, farmers, because guess what? farmers wouldn't exist without the government. Big Daddy government keeps them alive, even though they're just a money hole that we could just industrialize it all and it wouldn't mean anything anymore. Like food would be infinite. Like it'd be worth nothing.
Food apparently has no value, you know.
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't have any value.
Okay, Drew got it. Stop fucking
I'm not
talking.
finished.
Stop talking. Drew got it. I'm gonna want to make one little comment here. Don't make fucking snarky comments after people speak. Anyways.
So like when it does come to like like an employer exploiting its worker, it is important that they're not violating the rights or of that employee. Now, what I would say some employee rights? I would say a retirement, healthcare, some basic things like that. I think employers should provide or should have like a government alternative that they can provide that they pay for in through like taxes or other things. But other than that, I do think that like we need to have as free of a market as possible because like it only having a surplus only benefits everyone. It doesn't hurt anyone.
Okay, now food shops.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm genuinely trying to learn the positions of ancaps more because I'm sort of new to this entire concept, but I am highly skeptical of like ancaps in general, I guess. From what I know, they are skeptical of a state, and it is like, I guess it's like the more extreme version of libertarianism, I guess. And from what I know, they view taxation as theft, and at the same time, right? Like, so here's the thing. How I view the state is that it acts as like an organizer, you know? You need to have some degree of pay. That pay comes in the form of taxes in order to pay the organizers in order to allocate resources to different locations and how to organize, okay, the workers, okay, you build this bridge, you build this building, you go here, all right, this place needs more people, this place needs less people now due to this sickness, due to this famine, okay, whatever, right? But then if you take away the government, in this instance, then you no longer have that kind of centralized planning anymore. When you don't have centralized planning, then society is just gonna collapse. I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But then, and then the second thing that I sort of have an issue with, when I start to hear about a kind of ANCAP society, right, is that at the end of the day, somebody has to do the shitty jobs, okay? Like, for example, cleaning the streets, cleaning the shitters, cleaning like the whatever. This is the kind of stuff that no entrepreneurship wants to do. These are the kinds of things that no inventor wants to do, no businessman wants to do, you know? Who is going to be motivated or coordinated enough to do these kinds of jobs without like the incentive of like a kind of centralized planning or like a society to base this around like in an ANCAP society? Like, what's the incentive behind that? And how do we know we're not going to devolve into some kind of feudalistic state if we're living in some kind of ANCAP society? So I don't understand what is the drive or appeal of an ANCAP society, but maybe the ANCAPs on this panel can elaborate further and maybe I can see the appeal of it, but go.
Yeah. Like how I want to add on to her thing, and then yeah, you can respond. It's going to be a quick tidbit. I used to be an ANCAP, and one thing I could never answer is what stops a foreign nation from kicking down your door? Nothing at all.
Okay,
you have no cooperation, you have no organization, you get crushed. But yes, go on, Sue.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to answer to the economic arguments. I think there's an issue with understanding and then economic concepts in here. First of all, agriculture wouldn't disappear. Farmers wouldn't go bankrupt because state doesn't subsidize them. That is ridiculous because there's going to be demand for agriculture. We need veggies, or we need
your boy Alistair's gonna rile up the whole chat. Get ready.
Always going to be valued unless we become these being robots who doesn't need to eat these things anymore. And if farmers go bankrupt because the state doesn't exist, that will automatically mean there's no demand for it anymore and that we wouldn't need it. But this is not a realistic scenario.
Okay, so let me...
Usually in agricultural industry, if there's an issue with overpricing and inflation, it's mostly caused by cooperatives and the state involvement in it. Okay, that is as basic in it. And there was another question. if there's no central planning, the resources wouldn't be effectively allocated. That is actually the exact opposite of what, by economic logic, and exact opposite of the empirical evidence as well, a lot of stuff. It's the exact opposite. Private companies, as I explained, because they are profit focused, are more efficient in allocating resources, because everything in the economy has something called the seen and the unseen. Everything that you do has consequences. As for everything you produce, X amount of things you produced, okay, that costs you something, that costs you time and money, and it also costs you the things that you could have produced, but you're not by producing that thing. The state is really bad at making this calculation. So the state is really bad at staying in this diagram that we call the production possibility frontier, and because they fail to stay on it, the only thing they can do is that they have to take more debt or they have to produce more money, because they come up with budget deficits. And their budget deficits usually cause us inflation. And through inflation, we lose the fiat currency, which is anarchical, but that's another topic, loses worth and value. And we, as consumers, civilians, end up losing the worth of our money. So the government not just inefficiently controlled the economy, where it could have easily be controlled by supply and demand, but it also made us poorer by inefficient allocation of resources. And the question of anarcho-capitalism, and someone else can just take us, this is another topic, but argue about nukes and this and that, but the fact that aggressors can always...
I'd like to go next, by the way.
I can get into it.
Well, wait, no, Vaughn's gonna go after Stu.
I can say things about that, but it doesn't matter, because just because an aggressor may exist, an aggressor can attack at you, doesn't change the fact that you're still the moral correct. Someone can rape me in a second. It is very possible a rapist can rape me. It doesn't mean change the act of rape is unethical. It doesn't change the fact that it's immoral. That is not an argument.
That doesn't matter. It's practicality. If you want to get butchered, go right ahead. I don't want that. I'd rather have big bad daddy government protect me to make sure that a nation with a worser government comes around and fucks me up. I don't know where this idea of it's okay to take it, lay down, and then just take it as a people. Your community will rise together, create some form of government, and then it will combat said group. That's why I said it's an impractical ideology.
Wait one second. One second, please. Okay, Vaughn. Okay, 1 second. Sue. Vaughn was supposed to go. It was Sue. Vaughn was supposed to go after you. Fu, do you also want to go?
I would like to respond to the farmer thing as well.
Wait. I asked Fu the question. Dear fuck. 1 second. Fu, did you want to go?
Yes.
Okay, so it's gonna be Vaughn, Food, and then Midnight's gonna respond to Sue.
Okay, where do I get to come into the list? Because I'd like to enter in this discussion.
After me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry I didn't. Maybe too many people were going into 3 different tangents, but I want to make this point about the about ANCAP or capitalism. Was just that in our current system, supply and demand meeting isn't necessarily a plus for the world or a plus for the market, especially when you look at things like COVID, where there was the most efficient system we found in capitalism is basically for just-in-time production, where things are put on the shelves just in time so that they can produce most cheaply and hit demand just right. And that's how most companies like Walmart and Target and other companies function. And during COVID, we saw that model led to enormous problems for society in the world, because there were no reserves and so actually the thing needed, so when there was any supply shocks, the supply system could not actually do anything about it. So I would just say the idea that you have consumer prices and consumer demand equaling each other out so you have the best product is necessarily a net plus for society, and there's many circumstances where that will lead to more problems, because their price shocks will destroy will cause serious problems for society and people.
Yeah, that's why you need a planned economy.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, can I?
Go ahead.
Food shops. Sorry, you
Okay.
go food shops.
So, I just want to first say that Midnight and I have posed 4 questions, None of them were answered. All right.
That is
a lot of
ridiculous.
tangents were made. None of them were answered. Okay. A lot of tangents have been made. All right. For example, one of them was, if a foreign state were to invade, how the heck would an ANCAP society be able to defend against it? Another
Yeah,
one was, etc. So okay, hold on. All right, hold on. Let's be patient. So like, and there are 3 other questions. I don't even remember my own questions, but I'm pretty sure I would remember them if I could remember them. But the thing is that at the end of the day, it just seems to me, at least, like, these, I'm not convinced, you know? Like, I just don't see how an NCAP, if I was just a commoner, I would just not see how an NCAP society would benefit me at the end of the day, and I would just not see how an NCAP society could protect me at the end of the day. I would not feel protected in an NCAP society when it comes to commoner. Who the heck would protect me? If someone were to rob me, who would clean my streets? Who would, you know, like, there's so many questions. It just seems like chaos. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Paul, I was about to literally say that private defensive military and security exists in our capitalism. I was just like, the other people need to speak. But I think you're being dishonest, because a lot of the questions you have asked were answered. You did say, if we don't involve the state, if we don't involve planning, I don't know how it's going to be productive. And he mentioned,
oh, then I probably missed it.
I have not got an answer. I'm the one who hasn't got an answer, who repeatedly explained in economic terms and in empirical terms and in pure logic that is the opposite case. Still hasn't been answered.
All right.
Secondly,
have you read?
no,
Okay.
Wait.
You're
Let's
not-
respond, and Alice.
You're not. Anarcho-capitalist doesn't say that. Oh, you have no means of defending yourself. There can be private security companies that can provide that you can individually, voluntarily. Here's the term: voluntarily get into a contract. That is the difference from taxation. Taxation is not voluntary; you're forced to it. In private security firms, there's going to be a competition, and now you're going to ask, what is going to stop from them becoming monopolies? No, monopolies are only created by the state in a free market economy. Monopolies do not exist. So I'm answering before you say it. You can select from different variety of security companies to provide you security. And in another state that is not in America tries to attack you, you'll have these security firms who have military deterrence like the state has that can protect you or can deter other states from attacking you.
You guys hear me?
Okay.
Can I go next?
I have a one sentence
Whoa,
response to that.
I would love to go next. I've been waiting here quietly and patiently the entire time. I'd love to go next.
All right, Alice. Yeah.
Alrighty. I love you, ANCAPs. I love you,
Alice.
libertarians. I'm sympathetic to both of your causes because I used to be a libertarian myself. I never got into the ANCAP territory, but I can understand the logic of the ANCAP territories because centralization is a brutal process. So they think that if you get rid of the state, that's one less thing to be centralized. But within an ANCAPistan type civilization, you're going to essentially get these private military forces. Somebody's going to win that war between the private military firms, and things are going to centralize into a state regardless. So funny enough, libertarians make the compromise in thinking that using a state to stop centralization in the first place with antitrust laws and monopolization breaking up and all that sorts of stuff is going to solve the issue either way. I'm going to give you the socialist perspective, is because I'm going to argue that centralization is inevitable, and the best thing to do is actually democratize the whole process and bring it under the control of the people at the end of the day, rather than trying to oppose something that's inevitable.
Okay, what's that? Before anyone goes, James is gonna go right after that. We have been going at this point for nearly 3 hours, so I'm gonna give it.
I've enjoyed it.
So I'm gonna give it about 10 or 15 more minutes. We're gonna have to wrap it up.
I agree.
So at that point, I'm probably gonna pick out some people in here that didn't really get to talk that much, and then they're gonna be the last ones in, and we're gonna have a much more quicker debate going on. Okay, so. James is gonna go, and then someone after that can respond. Please respect everybody's time. Yeah, you can go political debates after James.
Alright. So the central idea of anarcho-capitalism is that you will have multiple competing firms to defend the consumer and the proprietor. But now the question does arise, what is stopping an agency from monopolizing and creating a state? That is a big concern. So you have to look at it actually from the lens of a businessman, the sense of, is a war with all of these private firms actually something that's profitable? Because you have to actually look at it, and the statist perspective, the way they get funding is by taxation. But the way agency will get it is by their consumers giving them money, selling their labor for their money. That is the essential case, and also the ethical argument. But I think I'll leave that to G.
Okay, political debates.
I don't know if this is what you meant by saying the things are going to monopolize and become a state. I was going to ask what stops the private military from setting up their own government there, since they're already like they've been paid by said people in that ANCAP society. Like, what would stop them from just say militaristically taking over and being their own government? And then my second question was, what would happen if, like, say, half of that ANCAP society would want said military, and then the other side of the ANCAP society would want a different military, right?
God damn.
Sorry.
What?
Okay, so if you're saying that if a bunch of people come together and decide to create a state.
No, I said like, what stops the private military that you're paying to protect your ANCAP society? What stops them from militarizing and taking over and setting up like a military-wise government? And my second question was, what stops like what if someone in the ANCAP society doesn't want to pay for that military branch, and like there's a set of people that doesn't want to do that, so now you can't afford it or you don't want them to?
Well, there'd be competing firms. There'd be competing agencies.
Yeah, okay, but I'm saying, like, let's say two different groups, right? They want to pay this left group wants to pay one military, one set of people to protect the society, and one other set wants to pay a different one. What stops those two from fighting each other?
This aggression, that starting a war would simply not be profitable.
Yeah, but it's not profit. It's more what's good for said ANCAP society, which is supposed to be the thing for capitalism.
Well, if we sort of presume that they are in it for the profit, then they will not do something such as that because it is not profitable.
But wouldn't it be more profitable if they took out the other military company and now they're the only ones that can be paid from that society?
And they'll have to deal with competing firms, competing agencies that want to stop the monopoly.
But if they take over other companies, wouldn't that become a monopoly, and wouldn't they be the only one that they could pay for? And wouldn't that end up setting it up like what would stop them at that point from setting up their own government?
What would stop them if they took over all the companies?
Yeah, if they bullied out all of the other military companies, right? And the only one that was left was them, and now they're the only ones being paid from this said ANCAP society. What stops said military company from militaristically taking it over and becoming the state or the government of that place?
I would say there'd still be multiple firms coming up for them to bat with, but I still highly skeptical.
What?
Well, there's a
on.
free market environment. In
All
a free
right.
market environment, you cannot just easily create monopolies without government regulations.
One second.
All of these monopolies,
All right.
you
So,
know, are
what
created by government
incentivized people? What incentivized people to have
One
different defense
second.
companies?
I'd like to respond to Sue.
Wait. Food Shop, did you get your chance to speak?
Huh?
Did you get your
I mean,
chance to speak?
if you, no.
Wait, you didn't?
Okay.
Wait, hold on. I spoke earlier, but yeah, I would love to speak again.
Wait, what's that? So we're gonna go at... Wait, who was the person that was trying to speak?
Me,
for you?
Alistair.
I was trying to talk because I
Wait.
definitely
Okay, so then we're gonna go midnight. We're gonna go midnight, then Alistair, then Food Shop.
Sounds good.
So for that particular example, why would you what would the consumer have a need for multiple defense agencies? We're not talking about police agencies. We're talking about military defense agencies. What normal person actively researches, thinks about, and determines the best organization for their defense on a national level and knows all of those combining factors? Only us let like us politic-blamed, obsessed individuals think of stuff like that. Not your
No.
normie, not your normal person, unless you think there's going to be this massive moral change and like perspective change where everyone's going to become incredibly politically and individually involved, which I don't think. I think some people aren't even capable of being that way. Like we're talking about, like you would have to have such an unheard contract of social cooperation that is no different than a government if you were to actually have to create those kinds of industries, you know? Like
Okay.
Like,
can I answer to this?
I'd like to get in a response too, if that's possible.
Oh, it's midnight. Oh, sorry, midnight Alistair, then food shops.
Okay. Are you done, Midnight?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right, Sue. I'm sympathetic to your cause. You think more free market means less centralization, but when it comes to private military firms, you know, somebody's going to win that war, and that's going to be the central authority after that war is won. That's not something you could stop.
Okay, so should I respond to these two or not?
You can respond real quick, but please let food shops speak up.
Okay, first of all, Midnight, every service that someone buys, you're thinking in a state of mentality. You don't think about national security matters more because we live in a world of nation states. Okay, so you're like, oh, it's politics, it's the government, it's whatever. It's the only people that have specific interest in politics are obsessed with it. But when we think of a world where we are not constantly coerced by the nation state, every service that we buy, okay, most people who have some sense of reality, they look at the service, they look at what they need, and they look how much it costs, and they look how other providers
Dude, I can't take this seriously.
Other providers work. Okay, and what I'm trying to say in here is that people are willing to pay for provider security. Okay, this doesn't mean if it's a big collective-wide security, they just stop caring about it. No. Like, even with the police force, we have things like neighborhood watches, things like that, where people voluntarily try to provide security for the community, for themselves, and for their families. People always value this, and they will always value this. So they will be looking for services so they can provide. If we don't have this state, people will think, okay, I want security for myself, for my family, and for my community. Oh, I have two options. I can go for one of these companies, and I can search the companies that can provide the security for me and from other aggressors, or I can choose to not sign any contract with anyone and rely on myself for security, which is not realistic because it's hard to defend yourself on your own with your own guns. So this thing that people doesn't care about politics and they don't care about defense is unrealistic when we need to defend ourselves from danger. It's a very basic human instinct. And the second caution out there is that I am not denying the fact that some people can be very evil in a state of nature, and they can abuse situations where if they gain the power, they can try to aggressively take away your rights. But here's what I'm trying to say, and what other ancaps here are trying to say. In a free market economy, even if a company is really big enough, we claim that monopolies only exist because state gives them certain regulations and privileges. When these regulations and privileges doesn't exist, we have a thing called the restaurant analogy. It's really hard to find restaurants that are monopolies because the state doesn't have the incentive to give them certain restrictions. So, because there's the free market economy and competition, every time a company gets really big and starts to acquire others, there are going to be other companies seeing that this is profitable, engaging in the market and being competitive. So when they try, state is the monopoly over law enforcement, where they coerce you into paying taxes, and if you don't, you get killed. That is what taxation is: pay or we're going to kill you. So
no one kills you over taxes.
No, yes they do.
That doesn't happen.
You get jailed, and if you
Oh
refuse
dear
to
God,
get jailed,
please.
kill you.
Okay,
It's
Wait, can I
ridiculous.
go?
What will
Wait.
the cops
Sue,
will kill you
please.
if you don't refuse to get jailed. That is ridiculous.
You don't even get jailed. I'm a tax
Wait,
cow.
no,
You don't even
I
get
know.
jailed unless it's like
Please.
hundreds of millions,
Okay,
like millions
you're
of dollars with the
You're,
fraud.
Okay,
so
okay,
if
one
I
second.
make-
Stop talking over the
Okay,
moderator.
This
Stop.
is ridiculous. If you're,
Okay.
Okay,
you're-
I'm about to mute you.
if you-
I'm muted. I forgot to go ahead and mute you. Please, whenever I fucking speak, stop speaking. Food shops, your turn.
Okay, so, so typically when we turn to governments, all right, and we turn to governments for protection, I understand that communities can protect themselves. I understand that we can turn to communities to protect themselves, like neighborhood watches. But one of these things is just that if there is an outside force coming in to invade or etc., typically a local community force is nothing compared to something like a modern day rendition of like a Mongolian horse army, aka like just say a caravan of like Humvees just come in, guns blazing, whatever, they rape all the women. Okay, so I'm gonna say this right now. At least in this government, okay, at least with a government, even the one person living out in the woods, if that person gets butt fucked and then killed, the government finds the body, right? We'll investigate the body and try to find whoever found the person who killed the person and raped them, whatever, and we'll try to investigate what has happened, right? But in an ANCAP society, if you don't have a community to protect yourself, okay? If you don't have a community, like a local community force to protect yourself, let's just say you're a one person living out in the woods in an ANCAP society.
I feel like
Who
I'm
is there
talking
to
to
protect you when the
mentally ill
Humvee
people.
Mad Max motherfuckers roll around and butt fuck you? Who will protect you from the butt fuckers?
Food Chops was kind of right about this.
Who will protect you from the butt fuckers? If you're one person living out there in an ANCAP society, who will protect you from the butt fuckers? I don't understand.
Okay, so
I don't get it. I don't want to get fucked in the butt. It's not my fetish. It's not my kink. I don't get it. Anyway, just that's it. That's
Okay.
my point.
So before anyone responds, I'm gonna keep this as a back and forth between food shops and the libertarians, sorry, the ANCAPs in the room, and then we're gonna have to end this off in about 5 or so minutes. Thank you guys again for coming out so much. This is again hosted by the Neo-Federalists. Kick.com/the Neo-Federalists if you want to look at their people that are in this debate. I have all of their links linked inside the inside the Kick chat. So let's get it back and forth between food shops and the ANCAPs in the room, and then we're gonna have to close it off. I don't think we're gonna be doing a fucking after show. Yeah, this has went way longer than we thought it was going to be.
Food shops. I want to respond to when you said like this more small community defending against a larger force. I want to bring in a more or even recent example of when in the U.S. military went into the Middle East. Okay, very advanced force. All right, top of the world. All right, it seems like no one could beat them. A few Middle Eastern guys. Okay. With some guns, managed to keep us. Managed to keep us there for longest of time. I do believe that there is some sort of force to community agency.
So you're cutting out a lot, liberated.
Well, you're cutting out a lot. I don't quite understand what you're saying. Sorry.
I mean, I get what he's saying, and I'd love to have a chance to respond.
Oh, wait, could you repeat what you said?
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm very scatterbrained, so I have to hear clearly what the question is.
Okay, if you guys want, by the way, if you didn't get that many chances to talk, I'm really sorry about that, but we're gonna have the other chats opened up for you guys to talk about it. But James, do you want to try to reiterate your question, or are you still cutting out like crazy now?
I'll just say that in a foreign, when a foreign nation comes in to invade, there'll be more of an incentive for the private agencies to defend their consumers more than there be an incentive for the actual state over them. Now, I know that the state might be more powerful than them, but once again, there is power in that community.
What if the state can offer more money than the populace can offer? This I can think of a million things, whatever.
Food shops and the libertarians and caps going back and forth right now.
Wait, hold on. So in this scenario, right? In this scenario, I'm trying to wrap my head around it, right? So the U.S. government came in, right? Into what territory again? Did you say Afghanistan or the Middle East?
Generally, it's both.
Both. And then what happened?
Then we were prolonged by the community forces that used bigger weapons than us, but still.
Oh, you're cutting out so much. You're cutting out
Okay,
so much.
He's
So
talking about guerrilla warfare. He's talking about guerrilla warfare. How
Okay,
the
what's
U.S. got destroyed by guerrilla warfare.
Okay. So, I just realized this is basically gone for 3 hours.
Yeah, it has. It's been a good conversation.
So-
I've enjoyed it.
So we're gonna
We
actually.
can
have to
definitely
private-
talk after.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah, if you guys want, you could jump down to the general politics.
come
of the
onto
server
my
and keep
stream.
talking. Right now, the guy that's running the stream is actually like getting a headache from how long this has been going on. So I'm just gonna have to like.
Yo, same.
I'm gonna literally actually have to like stop it now. Thank you guys so much for participating. I'm gonna
Hey,
go
we can
ahead.
do the outros though.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna
let's do
go ahead and
outros.
I'm gonna go ahead and let everybody that has something to advertise. So we can go Food Chops, James the Liberated, Alistair. Is there someone else in here that had? Oh yeah, then Midnight's gonna be able to advertise as well. Okay, so Food Chops, you can go and give your outro.
Sure. I'm Food Chops. You can find me on kick.com/foodchops. You can find me at A Food Chops on YouTube. I do political commentary and etc. I'm also an in real life political activist. And yeah, I've been on Destiny's stream before, and yeah, I've just done several other things. I've interviewed Ukrainian Anna, and yeah, done some other stuff. And if you guys are up for discussing the subject further, I'm more than happy to have you guys over at my stream, and we can continue. All right, that's it.
Okay, James.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at Liberated James and on YouTube at James Liberated. I don't really have too much of a following, so but just wanted to put that out there.
Nope, I guess so.
Okay, Alistair. Yeah.
Yep, I am Alistair the Great. I mostly talk about central planning, Marxism, and the theory of Marxism. That's mostly the videos that I make. You can find me, Alistair the Great, on YouTube, but I also have other platforms. I do post my content on Rumble in case if my YouTube gets deleted. But yeah, feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want to hear more about alternative arguments to libertarianism, liberalism, and capitalism.
Okay, and Midnight.
Hi, I'm Midnight Dancer. I'm a actual active candidate for a local election. I stream on Kick. You can find me at Midnight Dancer on Kick or Bob the Midnight Dancer on Twitter. Don't be afraid to shoot me a follow.
Okay, and then that just leaves us. Again, this is the Neo-Federalist podcast. The Roundtable, again, work in progress name. It's not actually the name that we're probably going to stick with. We have a bunch of people that come on from all different walks of life, all different beliefs of life, and we do not discriminate. If anyone wants to say anything on here, they can, as long as they're trying to stay within TOS. If you haven't already, you should check out our Streams chat. We have a bunch of links to everybody that is here, the direct links to everything that they advertised in here, as well as our Discord server. If you haven't already, shoot us a follow on Kick. Join our Discord server. That's probably honestly the biggest thing you could do for us right now. And in general, just have a good day. Thank you guys all for coming on. Tony, you can end the stream.
All right, have a good one. Thanks.
Okay, that was fucking hectic. So now if you guys
Alrighty, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream here. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more. I hope to see more of you showing up. I actually really enjoyed the positive chat. So many people showed up in the chat and were actively participating. This was a really fun stream. I hope to see you guys more.